The meeting of the Dudley-Charlton Regional School Committee is now in session. It is Wednesday, October 10th. It is 7 p.m. We're at the Shepherd Hill Regional High School Library, and we will all stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our special meeting of Wednesday, September 26th.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? Motion carries. It's unanimous.
One
Oh, that's
one
right,
abstention.
one abstention. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of Wednesday, September 26th.
Second.
Discussion?
I have, I'm just trying to find the page, Mrs. Sorry, I have two sets of notes, so. There is, under the discussion regarding, the policy change, on page 7. I had noted that, even if we had voted positively for the first reading, we would still need to move to a second reading, that the students involved would not be enrolled before the October 1 deadline, and we would not be receiving any reimbursement for them. So I'd like that reflected in the notes.
Anything else? Okay. All in favor? Motion carries and one abstention. And before we go any further, I would like to introduce our newest member to the school committee, our student member, Kaylee O'Brien.
Hi, it's nice to meet all of you. I'm Kaylee O'Brien. My mom actually, she used to come to these. She was Jody O'Brien.
Yeah.
If any of you guys know her, I'm sure you do. She's at Marlboro Public Schools right now. But I'm actually really excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity that Dr. Nash and Mr. Chaplin gave me to join all of you guys, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Kaylee. And don't be afraid to speak up when you want to, okay?
Awesome. Thank you guys for making me feel so welcome.
Okay, next on our agenda is approval of the warrants. And we do have 2 warrants this evening, and Mary did sign them, so. Next on the agenda is School Spotlight, Dudley L. School Robotics. And do we have?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and
Very excited. Right. They're outside
that is
waiting
going to
in
be
the
very
waiting in the wings.
exciting. It's always
very
good. I
exciting.
love robotics.
Are they doing that? You think that's fair?
Here they come.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, I have to tell you, we have quite the show tonight because we invited the Robotics Club, which is a new club, and not just a few came, the entire Robotics Club came. So this is a very exciting thing here at Dudley Elementary School. I would have to say that the fruits of everything that we worked hard for with the budget is culminated right here in having Katrina Schmidt, our technology integration specialist, and already the great things she's doing. Here we are, the first week of October, and we've already got a robotics club full in force, and she's got a Girls Who Code club going on as well concurrently.
And I love the T-shirt.
Oh,
My favorite
that is
color.
thank you to our to one of our parents, Skylar Lashwood's mom made them for us, and he designed them. We had to have a top dog on there, so we have a top dog. They did a great job. So they're awesome. Ms. Schmidt's just setting up here. You guys all set up? been a wonderful club. You guys are enjoying it, right?
Yep.
And it's a mixture of students. It's not just one grade level. We have all the grade levels here, so,
How many in the club?
well, there's what, 12 of you, right?
Wow.
However many is here. Let's see. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. By the way, when we put out the flyer for it, it completely filled up within a half an hour of school starting that day. And the waiting list is out there for lots more clubs.
All right, so we good? I can't figure out the computer, but that's fine, because we have it. So it's
Okay.
I'm Katrina Schmidt. I am the technology teacher and integration specialist at Dudley Elementary School. These are my robotics kiddos. We have Emily, Skylar, Travis, Brady, Christopher, Julia, Gabe, Braden, Jake, Aaron, and Dominic. And today we're just going to show you a couple of the things that we were able to do in this robotics club. I started the robotics club because I wanted to have a place where students could use the things that we use in class, but in a more casual setting where there aren't really expectations for what they do aside from to just play and create and have fun. So we have a bunch of different things. First, I'm going to have a couple kids show you the Ozobots. So Dominic can lead off with that, and then everyone who's not showing the Ozobots, if we want to stand back over here. So Dominic and Aaron can show that to you guys. That's all right. You can set it up and show them how it sticks together. That's what we'll do.
This
Perfect.
is an Ozobot. It follows the trail that you wrote.
So you can, why don't you hold up the paper and the little robot so everybody can see, even the people behind you.
Wow.
It's really cool.
And how does the Ozobot work?
So, you press the button, and if you can use different like colors, like different like on the line, and it follows different colors and it does different things. Like I think it like goes backwards when you put it on these colors. I think.
Do you want to explain the color codes, Dom?
The color codes are like if you put like a blue and a red together, it could do like something. But on these codes, it does two things. If it goes from like that way, it like zigzags, and then if it goes from the other way, it turns around and goes backwards.
So now you guys can show it.
So
Good
you
job.
have
Thank
to
you.
program it, right?
Yeah.
To do things.
That's really cool. That's cool.
Can you make any pattern you want with the colors? You can make them any way
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you can show it now, guys.
Oh, it's just swirling around.
And then it just keeps on going around until it like falls off the track.
Right. So that's the Ozobots. We have 5
Yay,
of those at
that
Dudley
was
Elementary
good.
School. So
Very good job, guys.
thank you very much. Classroom.
Great presentation.
And now we're gonna have Julia, Emily, and Gabe can show the B-Bot. So explain what it is.
So this is a Bebot, and you can code it in here. But if you you can do many ways and click it to go. And then we'll code it.
Is it on? Just the on switch on the bottom.
Yeah, it just stops the sound. And it just goes anywhere you code it.
So that's based on what you pressed on the top?
Yeah, and if you want to get rid of your pattern, you hit the X. If you don't wanna, then you just continue going on.
That's very cool.
Very cool.
Thank you. This is Christopher. He is working on making his own video game with an iPad app called Bloxels. So if you want to kind of maybe stand over here so they can see what you're doing while you do it, okay? Tilt it like this. How does that how does that work? Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I feel like, so you can actually do multiple like,
Levels.
yeah, and if you hit this button, it makes it so you can actually play the level.
You created that? Like you wrote the word height on that?
No, someone else did.
Oh, that's very cool.
Collaboration.
Good, honest answer.
And look, so if you like shoot one of these, it gives you like this, and you can throw one of these like that.
Wow.
So what do the different
Make a lot of
colored?
money when you grow up.
What do the? Why don't we go back to this screen? Okay.
Yeah, I just fell
And why
down.
don't you show what the different? Turn it like this and explain what the different
Wow.
colored blocks are, so they can see.
So the different color blocks, the red one is hazard, the blue one is just water, the green one is land, and the yellow one is money. Orange one is, it's like once you shoot it, it gets destroyed, and the purple, the pink one gives you like the bomb, and the purple one is like an enemy, but that didn't move for some reason. And the white one is like a checkpoint, and you can also configure it. Let me see. I think it's right here. Right here.
So there are a bunch of different ways to kind of customize the game. You can make the levels look however you want them to. And there are more steps as we move further, have more weeks. So
What's the name of that app?
Bloxels.
Very cool.
Yep. So do you want to show the game one more time, Christopher?
I want to like show like a part of it.
Okay. Just a quick one, all right?
So
Why don't you turn it around so they can see, honey?
So you click right here and it says like, yeah, I accidentally went on. And look, the ow, ow, ow.
Yeah.
You can use these bombs to knock out the enemies.
The purple's the enemy.
Yeah,
Christopher, how long does it take you to make a game like that?
it took me like 30 minutes or something.
Wow, that was excellent. What grade are you in?
Third.
Third. That's amazing. That's great.
All right, Christopher, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Yeah.
So this is Jake and Braden, and they're gonna show little bits. So explain how they work, honey, before we plug it together.
Seriously.
We just don't know, so give us like the basic details. How's that?
So these are, how do these connect together?
They just snap, like, I want to add this to this.
They snap with magnets.
And if they don't work, just put it to the other side.
Right. So these are all magnetic little parts of a circuit that just snap together, and it makes it very easy for kids to learn about programming and circuits, even at the really early elementary ages. So ours kind of fell apart while we were walking here.
I don't know how to put it back together.
So that's all right. We got it now. The power. This is something that they coded in our robotics club yesterday, and they are able to share. So when it's plugged in, it will kind of start working. They're
There
going
it
to
is.
show you what the different parts do. So you can lift up, why don't you show this part first, and then the next
It says hello.
Oh.
Hello.
And then if you turn this, it makes noise, and then you can move this to make different sounds.
It hurts my ears.
We discovered recently that there was a volume switch. Much easier to work.
It's not just like,
Great. So, yep. You want to share anything else, boys? Or you go?
Well, there's also different sounds that you can make.
All right.
Good
thank you.
job.
This one snaps it.
And now we we have Brady is going to show a robot that he built with the Lego We Do robot kits. So, Brady, let me hook it up, hon. Press the button. Okay, got it. I'll tell you when it's hooked up. Why don't you explain what it's going to do while we wait. Oh, it's good.
So this is connected to the Chromebook with Bluetooth, and this is the battery pack, which is connected to this motor, which spins this, which is connected to the tire, so it will go forward.
Okay, so I'm going to press the play here, and that's going to make it work.
Very cool.
And I'm going to press stop.
That's neat.
So this is something that he built and coded up yesterday for this. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Great job.
Great job.
Now we have Travis and Skylar, and they made 2 different robots. We have to share wheels between the robots. But so what's your first one you guys are going to do?
The trailer.
The trailer. Okay. So show what it is. Explain how it works.
So this motor, it's meant to go this way, but it doesn't actually work that good if we made it this way, so we made it go backwards. And actually it was meant to go like this, but it took too much weight down, so we added wheels onto the battery pack.
Let me know when you want me to start it.
And we actually found out that if you there is a color thing that when it starts going, it will change the color of the light. Right now it's blue, and it will turn like greenish blue when it starts moving.
Let me know when you're ready, honey. I'll press
Okay.
play.
It's hard to put back together. Okay, it's good. Okay.
All right, good?
Huh?
Good. That was good problem solving.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
And most of it is mainly right here because when the motor goes, it will push this round, which will push this. These are not actually hooked up to anything. It's just they move with it, so it will move faster with the wheels on here.
Great. Great plan.
So our second creation is a race car that actually the motor is right here and the most of the part is right here. So the battery pack is in the front. Or the back, but Skylar actually turned it into a race car by adding, because before there was no front to it, so it was like this before, but then I put this onto it, which made it into a race car.
You did all this with no plans. This was like your brain making this?
No, we went onto the website and it showed us how to build it.
Perfect.
It's like a drag strip.
right.
Yeah.
So the cool things about these Lego robots are this part in the middle with the light on it is the battery pack, and everything else is just Legos that hook up to it, so you can they can build entirely whatever they want. So I'll show how this one works. I'm gonna press play in a second when are you ready, Sky?
I'm gonna see if I can hook this up to it.
No, let's not do that right now, okay?
All right, time.
Wow.
And I actually made a mistake. It's not this one that changes color, it's this one. So if you start it.
You want me to start again?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
It
yeah.
changes the
Okay.
color of the power button.
Very cool.
All right, and that is all we have for you.
That was a lot. When does Robotics Club end?
We have it for 6 weeks, so we just finished our 3rd week this week. We'll have 3 more, and then we will do more and more sessions.
I can't wait to buy your game when you have it all up. You're gonna have that done in 6 weeks?
Maybe, we'll see. Right?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good job.
Left behind, that's a left behind.
And they build it in half an hour.
I know.
Oh, he is?
Amazing.
They have such creative minds now. And I'll tell you, those Legos are so great because you buy the little kits that have the motor and everything.
It's great.
Yeah. That was a great performance. It was really good. That brings us to Citizens Forum this evening. Do we have anyone that would like to come forward to speak with us? Okay. Communications, Dr. Nash, do you have any this evening?
No, I don't.
And I do not. And how about our members? No? Okay. Superintendent's report, and we have special topics, targeted district review.
Mrs. McLean, could I step back for a second, because I forgot. We did receive an email, several listed from Mrs. Castigian, who wanted to compliment the district because of the change of the bus routes. It has shortened the bus route dramatically by over 20 minutes for her child, so she wanted to let us know that had been done and to congratulate us on that.
Thank
Or
you.
not congratulate us, but to thank us for whoever reanalyzed the district bus routes.
Thank you. Superintendent's report, Dr. Nash.
Yes, thank you. This evening, under my special topics report, I'm going to report about the targeted district review that was conducted last year. You have the entire document in your packet, and I have provided a brief summary of the areas. For those who are not aware, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education conducts what they call district reviews, and in many districts, those reviews are really targeted around specific areas. Many years ago, these reviews were a lot more comprehensive, and teams would spend upwards of a week in a district. Now it's limited to around 3 days. As part of that process, their methodology includes visiting the district, obviously, with a team of individuals. Many of them are not employees of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, but they are retired practitioners, ranging from superintendents to principals. So they are individuals who, throughout their career, have worked in public school districts in some capacity, and therefore, hopefully, bring some knowledge and a specific skill set in undertaking this. These targeted reviews, just by the description of the adjective targeted, focus on specific areas. In the case of Dudley-Charlton, when they were here last February, they looked at 4 areas in particular: leadership and governance, human resources and professional development, and financial and asset management. Along with that, they always look at instruction. I provided for you what the report looks like. The report details with a lot of specifics, as you will see, their findings. And while a district may refute their findings, they cannot refute anything that is not factually true. So, for example, you can go in and say that we have 29 of this, not 30. But you cannot refute their findings, their observations. They collect their data certainly through documents that they review, as well as through interviews. Some of you probably were involved in that, the school committee. Some of the members of our administrative team certainly were probably involved in those interviews, as well as members of our faculty and support staff. In addition, they visit classrooms over that 3-day process. And so what I have summarized for you, and with really broader stroke is the findings in these 4 areas. They're divided into categories: strength findings, challenges or areas of growth, and then their recommendations. So I will quickly share some of those with you and the community. Under leadership and governance, the group that came in to visit noted some of the strengths of being the collaboration, transparency, and trust among the superintendent, the school committee, the Teachers Association, and town officials. And the second, I think, bullet that strikes you probably, and certainly as I've mentioned a number of times before, is the high level of morale among administrators and staff that they found when they spent their 3 days in this district. With respect to challenges and areas of growth, district planning documents did not provide a clearly defined vision for improvement for the district as a whole and for each school individually. And also, planning documents had focused primarily on structural improvement and not on student improvement and instructional practice. Their recommendations, which arise obviously out of their areas of growth, were to involve more data-driven, goal-oriented documents in devising those or revising those, to adopt a backwards planning process that focuses on desired student outcomes, develop an annual action plan or district action plan that prioritizes district initiatives that are aligned with the strategic plan. And the last area is to make sure that all of the school district improvement plans certainly tie into the district plan, which would make sense. In instruction, the strengths were noted around teachers and their knowledge of subject matter, their ability to manage classes with positive supports for students. It's a very positive environment, climate that was conducive to teaching and learning, positive supports and routines that certainly ensure appropriate student behaviors. With areas of growth, the quality of the instruction, the group noted, varies, and especially in engaging students in higher order thinking skills, as you know, something that this district has really begun to attack as an entire district through its strategic plan and through project-based learning, which addresses really in its methodology engaging students in higher order thinking skills. Students having opportunities, probably more opportunities, to communicate their ideas and their thinking with each other. And students engaging in challenging tasks regardless of their learning needs. So this is about educating all students, and when we talk about all means all, it's not just about those who are at the higher end of the spectrum being involved in challenging tasks. And then teachers' use of a variety of instructional strategies. And again, one of the goals with project-based learning is to really stretch people's ways of looking at things in the way that they instruct in their classrooms. The recommendations naturally flowing out of that is to focus more on higher order thinking skills, to allow students to communicate their ideas and engage with each other more often, and to engage all students in challenging tasks, and certainly to focus on, as part of that, by doing all of that, the teacher would be using a variety of instructional strategies. With respect to human resources and professional development, again, the strengths recognize the culture of professional growth for teachers, the timeliness in the observations and evaluations of staff, with recommendations from administrators to improve their pedagogy, a PD program that is aligned with district and school priorities and that supports teachers, areas and challenges of growth, the lack of an evaluation process for administrators that enhances professional growth, and that also includes recommendations for improvement. A recommendation is that all of the administrators develop SMART goals as part of their evaluation system, and that they receive subsequently to that, they receive ongoing feedback. As part of our process, this month, actually, I'm meeting with all of the administrators to develop SMART goals. I've met with probably half of them. I have meetings coming up tomorrow and next week, and my goal is always by the end of October to have those goals, both the student learning goal as well as the professional practice goal, approved, because the window of time to really implement is then about 8 months. before we evaluate. We also, as part of the process, do what I call a mid-year correction around January or so. I meet with all of them again to see whether or not we're on target, they're on target, whether we need to make any adjustments to the goal before we get to the end when we evaluate based on that. With respect to fiscal and asset management, the strengths again recognize the strong positive working relationships that the school district and the towns of both Dudley and Charlton have, the collaboration around the budget process, and a budget that meets required net school spending. And certainly, I'm sure this was coming on some of the work that was done by the former superintendent. The district also has developed a capital plan for the future planning of its aging buildings, and also buildings are generally, as we've noted, in very good condition due to the fact that we really have an extremely dedicated, conscientious group of custodians and those who maintain our buildings, something that I've mentioned before. Challenges in area of growth revolve around the budget document, not including trend data or a summary narrative highlighting district goals, the connections that give you some of that additional information that shows how the budget impacts really instruction, and then recommendations to construct budget documents that are more complete and transparent with respect to that area of growth that they talk about, and to ensure that your budget is clearly aligned, because your budget is your single most important instructional vehicle. It is the way you move instruction. So to make sure that's aligned to your district plan, i.e. a strategic plan, and/or that therefore the school plans that come forward are aligned to that also. All of those have to go together and form a complete package. So that's the report. I was not here, obviously, for that. There were a lot of administrators and a lot of you who were here, so certainly you were involved in that process. Every single report will come out, any that I've ever read in any district, will have strengths, will have areas of growth, and we'll have some recommendations. So part of our discussions as we move forward as an administrative team is to look at these areas. I can tell you that some of them are already being addressed, and there are other areas that we certainly need to look at carefully with respect to educating all students and ensuring that whatever our pathways are and however we deliver instruction, that instruction provides equity for all students and rigor for all students. And I think that's the focus to some degree, along with all of the other things that we're looking at in this district around project-based learning and around response to intervention that we'll focus on, i.e. teaching and learning. So that's my report as far as that, but I do have some other things. So. Would you like me to continue?
Yes.
Okay, good, all right. Next in your packet, I've prepared for the committee for your review and certainly for any feedback, a calendar for special topics, reports, and presentations. It's always been my roadmap in my other districts to kind of keep me on task to make sure that all of the things that need to be approved by a school committee are on there. But as importantly, I think one of the things that oftentimes we forget is the fact that we're here because of students. And so to have something that we saw this evening with the Dudley Elementary students and the Robotics Club present this evening is a reminder to all of us that we need about why we are here. And so you'll see throughout the year all of the principals will be bringing groups forward to you for presentations germane to their buildings, as well as all of the other things that need to happen during the school year, like approval of handbooks and programs of studies and school improvement plans. So this is a draft document. If there's something else you'd like to see added, I've also put in reports from some of your directors, updates from athletic director to get an understanding of where we are in the program, updates from some of our other administrators too. Our new food service director near the end of the year will come in to do a report based on, almost completing his first year. So if you see something or if the committee would like to add something, as I said, this is a draft document moving forward. Or if you want to approve it the way it is, I'm open to that too. So.
Do we need to make a motion to approve the
If you would like, I
calendar
think that
dates?
probably would be a good thing to do.
Right.
Yep.
I'll
At this point.
entertain a motion to approve the calendar for the special reports, topics, presentations.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on it? Seeing none right now, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you. We do have an open date in March. If there's something in particular that you would like, we certainly can put that in. I kept the last June open because it's a busy time. June is a busy time of year for everybody here, so trying to bring students in that probably wouldn't work at that time.
Now, while we're doing calendar, in November and December, I don't know if we set our school committee dates. We have one in November and only one in December. I think maybe we should do it this evening, seeing.
You're already on here.
Is it
You're
on
on
here?
this calendar, the 14th.
November 14th.
And December 12th.
Okay, because we usually discuss it. Everybody good with that then?
I think I'm away in November, but you can certainly meet without me.
November 14th. Everybody good with it then?
Sure.
Okay, so it's voted on, that's good.
Thank you. And that is it this evening for me.
Thank you,
Under
Dr.
special
Nash.
reports.
Okay, next is student representative report. Kaylee?
Right. So we actually had a really busy first month of school, as you can imagine. I'm going to start with today. So never mind having a busy first month of school. Today we had so many things going on, many things to be proud of. So today we had the PSATs. Juniors, they took it in the cafeteria. They had the option of taking it the second time around. It was $16 in guidance. It was a really good idea to take it as a junior because you're eligible for a merit scholarship. Colleges like WPI, they look for students with merit scholarships. And we actually had 3 students of our own, Emily Briggs, Gina Yu, and Cameron Cushing. They were the top 50,000 students out of 1.6 million. And they were from Shepherd Hill. They actually got the merit scholarship. So they're seniors right now, and they took it last year when they were juniors. So huge congratulations to them. Sophomores also took the PSATs today. It was mandatory in their English classes, so they took it as their first time around, and then they have the option next year to take it again. Also today we had the first unified basketball team game. It was away at Algonquin. They've been working very hard. I'm not sure if you've known them, but they're an excellent group of students between students with and without mental disabilities, and they've been working really hard. They have their first home game this Friday. Hopefully we'll see everyone there to support them. Ram Squad is coming out to support them and cheer both teams on. We also had the Game Change Leadership Summit today for students with Ms. Gustafson, our health and wellness teacher here at Shepherd Hill. They went to Gillette with the Game Change Violence Prevention Program, and they talked about violence prevention opportunities and how to improve the program with our Attorney General, Ms. Mara Healy, and Mr. Robert Kraft. We also had on October 1st the Safe Driving Ambassadors. Ms. Gustafson also ran that. They started a new program, Distractology, which is to get students to really understand the importance of being focused while driving, not even just texting, but in the car with their friends. Just talking can be a distraction. Eating a hamburger from McDonald's is a distraction. So to really, while you're behind the wheel, especially as a first driver, just to get that knowledge out there, because, you know, there's been so many tragedies and you just want to prevent those from happening. And with this program, you were actually 19% less likely to get into major and minor accidents after learning and going through the Distractology course. So there's actually a special training stimulator next week, and it's almost like the blood drive we have here at Shepherd Hill. I'm not sure if it's in the gym or in the health room, but so all next week there's appointments open, and they have a training simulator to go through, and certified our Safe Training Ambassadors to go through with each student who made an appointment to teach them about the importance of not being distracted while driving. Also, this month we have the MICCA event. So Saturday is going to be the Marching Band and Color Guard Home Show, October 13th at 6 p.m. They're going to showcase and compete on their home fields. They've also been working very hard even since the summer, any of you guys who live super close to the school, you've probably heard them working very hard. You know, there are times at night, and credits to them. I don't know if I could stay up past 10 o'clock doing my instruments. Some of those are very heavy, so you know how hard they've been working for that. So hopefully we can get a large crowd out there to go and support them for all they do for our school. Also in October, it's the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, as many of you know. So the school is trying to, well, we're always doing it, but to get facts out there about breast cancer and about the awareness that we should have this month especially, not just the whole year. So we're actually doing a pink out this whole month with the sports team. So especially through the 16th through the 30th, all sports teams are going to be wearing pink, and donations will be collected during halftime of the soccer, field hockey, and football games this month. This month we also had, 2 weeks ago, the first honors dinner. 137 students were able to attend the first honors dinner. They had a guest speaker. Their keynote speaker was Mr. Chris Notchling. He works for NASA, and he was a graduate from Shepherd Hill, and he talked about the importance of hard work and dedication to the students who made it into the first honors dinner. Lastly, we also had our Spirit Week last week. It was a great success. It brought the school together. Mr. Duffy and Miss Peel, they ran that, and they stayed after all week. You saw how hard students were working to just make their classmates happy and to come together as a school. From tug of war to lip sync and musical chairs, it was friendly competitions among the classes, and you really got to see everyone just come together as a school. In past years, maybe about 5 years ago, you'd have some negative competition, but ever since Mr. Chaplin came around, you saw all of that energy come into one. And so it's not like freshmen.
I just said we wouldn't have it at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
It's a real quick corner.
So no more freshman toilets. I'm sure that they were thrilled not to have that pressure anymore. I know as a freshman I was scared I was going to get toilet paper thrown at me. Mr. Chaplin made that clear though. He was like, none of that. We're going to have a positive environment, and you actually saw this year we had the most freshmen come together, and they had about 60 people do their lip sync, and they had a fantastic time, and you could tell they were excited to finally be in high school and enjoy that experience. We also had our second annual Homecoming Day, September 29th. It brought the community together. All varsity teams had home games that day. We had a pretty good record. I think volleyball won that night. There was also, 2 weekends ago, the fundraiser at Tri-State for Mr. John Pear for the Student Support Foundation, and also on that weekend it was great to see everyone come together and celebrate the life that Mr. Pear had. And you could see not only through the maroon gold, you had some people showing out their blue support that they had. And last year, this time, it fell on Homecoming Day. And you could see everyone who was talking about homecoming and stuff, it had Mr. Pear in that. And you could just see everyone who came. It was not only coming together as Shepherd Hill, but it was coming together as the Dudley-Charlton community to celebrate the life of Mr. Pear this weekend. So that's all I have for tonight.
That was very informative. You covered all bases. That was really good. Thank you so much. Any questions by Kaylee?
We have high hopes for Kaylee.
Thank you. I'm sorry. No, I went through that kind of fast.
That was excellent.
A little nervous still.
We expect that every.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you guys saw when you were going through to vote in on a motion. I did a little hand raise over there, and then I picked up. I was like, oh, wait, I don't vote for that part. I'm not sure if any of you saw that. And so it's awesome. Thank you again for making me feel so welcomed, especially as a new member of your committee. It's great to sit here and to get to know really more about what's going on in our school. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. Okay, that brings us to new business. Director of Finance and Operation update, Rich.
Thank you very much. For the committee this evening, I do have two donations for acceptance. Dudley Middle School received an anonymous donation of $100 to pay off food lunch deficits at Dudley Middle School. And Dudley Elementary School received a donation of $146.04 from Follett.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the donations.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of quick notes and comments about the closeout of FY18 in terms of reporting. Our audit firm, Powers & Sullivan, were here last week conducting the audit for FY18. The plan will be for them to present to school committee at one of the January meetings. Depending on schedule, we'll figure out which one makes the most sense, as they've done in the past few years. Next year, we've postponed the audit by a couple of weeks to better coincide with the DESE end-of-year report. In the past, the DESE end-of-year report was always due at the end of September, but there was a pretty liberal granting of extensions of up to a month as needed. They've stopped that practice, so now the 9/30/10/1 is a firm date. So to better correspond with timelines, that was the reason for pushing back the audit by a couple of weeks. The district, we filed obviously on time this year, as we would expect to, and the Department of Revenue report, which is the information that generates the certified excess and deficiency, is due at the end of the month and will be submitted in a timely manner for that. I don't know if anybody has any questions about the audit or the end-of-year report or the DOR reports. Seeing none. One piece of business for the committee. We've received a notice of resignation from the current driver's ed clerical position. In reviewing the last posting of this position, we weren't 100% sure, based on the research, if this was a position that had been approved by school committee in the past. It's been filled at least since 2007. But again, like the cafeteria workers from last year, we just weren't sure, so we figured it would be better to err on the side of caution and bring this forward to the school committee so that we were absolutely clear about it. So I'd ask that you authorize the posting of this position, which is funded by the driver's ed program, and would be basically a general secretary category in the wage and benefit schedules.
I make a motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion on it? Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much. That is all I have for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Overview of MCAS results, general and special education, interim director of curriculum, director of special education. We'll do the presentation for us.
The honors.
Okay.
He did. He actually drove me there.
Okay, I'm gonna use this as home. Oh, yes. Alrighty, folks, I'm going to give you an overview at the state and district level for MCAS. And those of you new on the committee might not be aware that this year in grades 3 through 8, the students took the MCAS Next Gen test, which is a little bit different from the legacy test, the former test. Okay, for one thing, it is much more rigorous. For another thing, it was done all on computers. So this is kind of a significant variable. Okay, so just a reminder that when I refer to Next Gen, I'll be referring to testing for grades 3 through 8, except for science. The science test at the middle school was also the legacy. The math and English, however, Next Gen. Last year you received a letter, but I just want to remind you again that there's going to be some new terminology. Instead of advanced proficient, we have exceeds or meets targets, etc. So you'll see some new nomenclature here. And also school districts are no longer leveled. So if you've been following any of this in the paper or looking for data online, you'll see it's presented differently. So school building or school district isn't level 1, level 2, that is gone. All right. Okay, so what I'm presenting to you first, and it's also in your packet, are the results for English Language Arts statewide. So statewide, of course, means everything from Ayer to Wesley. Okay, so we'll have all different kinds of communities factored in here. And if you notice, most of the schools in the state are in the mid-range. In fact, 80% of the schools are in partially meets or meets expectations. And again, that's across the state. And the bottom line here shows just a slight uptick for English language arts overall. For mathematics, again, bulk of the schools fall in that mid-range, and for mathematics, there is a slight downtick. Again, overall, grades 3 through 8, statewide mathematics. Okay, for science, we have the legacy results. So again, older test, not on the computers, grade 10, grade 5, and 8 in science, statewide, overall took a dip. And if you notice, I did take this information directly from DESE so that you could see what they were presenting to all the educational leaders about the overall results. And they really, really advise strongly not to compare Next Gen and Legacy because they're very, very, very different tests with a lot of new indicators that I'll be getting into shortly. Okay, so there are no longer levels for schools, no longer 1 through 5, but we do have a new rating system. So there are schools of recognition. I think that probably our closest neighbor with a school of recognition was in Shrewsbury. Schools meeting targets, partially meeting targets. Again, Dudley-Charlton is there. We have Dudley Elementary, who is meeting targets for their improvement with certain subgroups, and I'll talk about that a little further along. We have no schools requiring target assistance, no schools requiring broad comprehensive support. All right, so the new indicators for non-high school. Yes, we will look at achievement in ELA, math, and science. We'll also be looking at student growth. What the state is doing is they're identifying targets based on school demographics and looking at the different subgroups and measuring progress with those groups. Another very important factor is that English language proficiency will be considered and weighted now. And another indicator that we've never seen before is chronic absenteeism. So chronic absenteeism is described as students who miss in excess of 10% of the school year. So that would be roughly 18 days. And the other thing that I think right now that's important to note is it doesn't matter why they miss. So it doesn't matter if mom and dad are taking you on vacation or if you're home with the flu, it's instructional time missed with no differentiation as to why. For high schools, there are even more indicators. So we have those same things with achievement, with student growth, English language proficiency, but we will also, with high schools, be looking at a 4-year cohort graduation rate. We don't have that historical data right now. Okay, we obviously haven't had 4 years worth of data collected at all. But we'll be looking at dropout rate, chronic absenteeism again at the high school. Also, the percentage of 11th and 12th graders completing advanced coursework. So this is quite interesting. At Shepherd Hill, we do have 14 AP classes, and we have students who take more than one AP class. Also, we have students that take AP classes in 10th grade. We have some dual enrollment offerings, and other rigorous courses would be things like Project Lead the Way. So that is, again, a brand new testing universe. We've never had those things weighted before. Okay, so this really just shows you all the different criteria in a different format. What it looks like for non-high schools, what it looks like for high schools. Again, there's a ranking system, whether schools based on, again, on those criteria exceed, meet, etc., or show a decline in some of those areas, and we don't have anything to compare from last year because those indicators are all brand new under ESSA. All right, so what are the Dudley-Charlton results? Okay, where it says accountability percentile in the far right column, that means, we'll take the first number, 67 for Heritage School. Heritage School did better than 67% of the schools at that level in the state. Where it says progress toward target, that is the measurement for student growth. The student growth in the various subgroups. So that would be students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, and so forth. What you'll notice is that Heritage School, though it has a slightly higher accountability percentile than its sister school, Dudley-L, is ranked as partially meets, and Dudley-L is actually ranked as meets. Why? Because they're over the magic number of 75 in progress toward target. So the state is really looking at raising the ground floor. The philosophy, I suppose, is, a rising tide raises all ships. And in many cases, the data can be a bit misleading. For example, if you look at Charlton Middle, if you look at Shepherd Hill, you see that they have lower progress toward targets. They are also not Title I schools. They have less room for growth in another way of looking at it, where Dudley-L has more economically disadvantaged students and had some more room to grow, if you will. And that's not making excuses at all. I just want to point out that sometimes the data can be a little misleading unless you look at all the contexts. Okay, so again, the state recommends that we don't compare percentiles. Their words, not mine. Different comparison universe, inclusion of all of these additional indicators, and fewer years of data using calculations. So I think we have some ideas that I'll be sharing at the end. Also, you'll be hearing from Ms. Allen, the Director of Special Ed, about where we want to target for improvement. But it's very difficult to talk about trends. Right now, this is a brand new baseline. Okay, so overall, the district is rated as not requiring assistance or intervention. Charlton Elementary and Mason Road are listed as insufficient data. That's because they are not tested. That is why they have that ranking, and everybody else not requiring assistance or intervention. Again, we're essentially in the middle.
That's good.
This is another way to look at the categorization of districts, and I just want to point out one thing on those districts that need focus or targeted support. One bullet point that's important to note is that districts who have low participation can wind up in that category. So even though parents do in fact have the right to opt out of MCAS testing, that could land a school building or a school district in the focus or targeted support area if there's reported low participation. Again, it doesn't matter the reason why the low participation occurs. Okay, this is interesting to me, probably will be interesting to you as well. There will be a new district and school report card issued. We have not seen it yet. Yes, the individual scores have been sent home to parents. Parents will be getting those this week, but I'm talking about the district and school report cards that we receive and we publish for the public. And they're going to be having new measures. And I guess the rationale is to look at schools more holistically, beyond assessment, beyond accountability. And you'll see that what will also be published for schools in the district will be the discipline rates, the availability of art education. We do fairly well there, I would imagine. Educator data. So the state does in fact track teacher absences, teacher rating, teacher teachers past 3 years of experience, for example, versus those under the 3-year marker point. Grade 9 course passing, so where are kids coming from as they go into high school, and per pupil expenditure. So all of that will be published. Again, we have not seen that document yet. That's late fall, and I'll certainly make sure that you see that when that becomes available. Looking forward. Okay, so next week, or next meeting, I should say, you'll be hearing from each of the schools, and they're going to drill down a little deeper. But my essential question is, how are we going to move the district from partially meeting toward meeting expectations? So we are going to need to identify the lowest performing subgroups in the district, also look at the areas of needed growth, ELA, math, or science, get some targeted goals and objectives. So Ms. Allen and I have already been talking a little bit about what that might look like. We're going to have to revisit response to intervention strategies, look at tiered support, reevaluate personnel, programming, and practices. Are we using the resources we have the most efficiently? So we'll be going through all that in anticipation of our targets for next year and how to get there. Any questions? A lot of information, I know.
They still mark on the 280, is it still the same? What does a kid get when they get it home, and how does that report look like?
Okay, for the legacy, yes.
So the high school kids would get
the same
old-fashioned
one, but this is the last year.
Okay.
For the new one, there are new cut scores. I'm sorry, I just closed that, and it had it on one of the first slide there that should be in your packet down the bottom.
It was something like, I got it today, this week.
Oh,
For 3rd grade, it was something like 580 or something.
Yeah,
so it's completely different.
It will look very different, so that's why we say, don't compare, a 280 to a 580.
They send an explanation for the parent?
Yes, there's an explanation. All the translations went out as well to parents who need that. So there was like a shell explaining all of this. I believe also, folks, who were here last year, you got a letter about that from Ms. Allen when she was in this position, and that information is readily available online if you just want to see the cut scores.
Okay. So Barbara, do you like this better?
Honestly, I was a teacher in another district when MCAS first came about, and I remember as an English teacher seeing Arabic and thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't read Arabic as a 10th grader in high school. I think I read it as a lit major in college, and it took everybody a little while to maybe digest it and make some sense out of it and say, okay, we're going to improve writing. And I think as far as the achievement goes, it'll be the same process. We're going to have to get used to it, and we're going to have to try to make some sense of it. I would imagine the state might have some more iterations perhaps, or clarifications. I don't know, again, if you've read in the paper, there have been some appeals and so forth. Right. What I do like that they seem to be looking at things holistically, that when we talk about AP scores, that's important too. What does the school offer as a whole? We talk about art and discipline and per pupil expenditure, right? What do we say here? You say all the time, we're doing a great job with the resources we have. So I do like that we'll get credit, if you will, for some of the other things other than just data. And because there are certainly other things that make up a school.
Right. So you think they'll correlate the per pupil with the results? Is there any kind of statistic they'll do on that? Just that
we don't have any statistical data. I think that'll be very interesting.
I think that'd be very
to see
find
that.
out.
I personally am glad that they're going to put that on there, because if you have districts who have limited resources, that needs to be balanced. We've said that at town meetings, and we're very fortunate to get the override because people are making that connection. Right. But I would love to again look at the RTI models. I've talked to Diane a lot about that since her building did so well. But of course, that takes resources as well.
Go ahead, we have a question.
I have a question about when they measure improvement in a grade. Are they talking about those individual students improving from, say, when they take it in 10th grade, the test? Are they comparing improvement of that current 10th grade to last year's 10th grade group? Or are they talking about how they've improved from, I guess, when they last took the test as 8th graders?
Right, so they look, well, historically, they've looked at trends. Unfortunately, with the legacy, that's very difficult to do because we do, have this big switch. But most of the student growth has to do with the different subgroups. Are we doing well with our English learners, with our students with disabilities, with our economically disadvantaged? So I understand what you're saying. It's kind of looking at apples and oranges. And I think most people understand that you really have to look at the trend overall. And some of the other things that are perhaps misleading that you'll probably hear, I would guess, from Mr. Chaplin, if, as a former English teacher, we had 97% of kids score proficient or higher, and then if we drop to 96%, it shows a decline. But other districts might go up from 85 to 87, and we're still higher.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that you really have to
But the decline is not necessarily bad, because that's where those kids are.
Right.
Compared to the kids who are now in 11th grade.
Yes.
They're in different bodies.
Right. I agree, absolutely. And that's why.
Make a valid statement that you're not improving. If those kids improve from 9th grade and they're smarter as 10th graders, then you've improved.
I agree, and that's why I say it can be a little bit misleading.
And sometimes it's better to be low because you look like you
Yes.
did better.
In a sense, yeah, you
know,
get credited
for doing
that
better,
growth, and
yeah.
that's weighted more heavily.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So I'm glad that you're giving me this chance to just put that out there because
Right.
it's very true.
It is.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Barbara got to share the exciting new changes, and I'm going to share with you the results, overall results of the district special education scores. And I can tell you when these came out and I looked at them, I kind of but then I said, no, you know what? This is a great baseline, and we're going to just jump in and we're going to see what we can do to get them up. So the first part of my presentation, again, I don't have a lot of exciting news to share, but we know with everything there's strengths and there's weaknesses. So I'm going to go ahead and let you see where we're at. So what you're going to see on each slide, this top part, is the overall number of the students with disabilities in that grade level. So for example, Shepherd Hill Regional High School, grade 10, last year when they took this test, there were 33 students identified with disabilities who would have taken this test. Then down here, you're going to see the percent of students that were in the advanced or proficient category. Again, this was because this was the legacy. And then on the next gen, you're going to see the percentage of meeting or exceeding expectations. So this first column is our school scores for that grade level for students with disabilities. The second one is state for students with disabilities. The bottom one is the number of students in that grade level who took the alternative portfolio. So grade 10 on the legacy, slightly less than the state, 2% less than the state for ELA. Math, we were significantly less. And you will find as we go through that math, we had a pattern of being significantly less. Grade 10 science, we did quite well. Math, again, grade 8, 25 students with disabilities. CMS, and you'll notice again, math, substantially less than the state average. 3 students on all portfolios in that grade level. Science, just slightly less than the state average. Again, DMS, math, we did slightly better in ELA. Science, I'm going to not spend a lot of time on these because they're in your packet. CMS grade 7, again, math, weak area. 1 alt portfolio. DMS grade 7, again, math. So when Barbara had mentioned talking about the areas where we need to work on, clearly math is one of those areas, without a doubt. Grade 5 DMS did quite well compared to the state. For science as well. Grade 4 at Heritage, again, struggled more in English, 2 alt portfolios. Move on to Heritage. Dudley-L grade 3. You can see they exceeded. So an overall snapshot, and again, I'm not standing here saying we should celebrate like, woo, these were fantastic scores. This is where, relatively speaking, we did well compared to ourselves. So DMS grade 8 in ELA and science, DMS grade 7 for ELA, DMS grade 5 for ELA math and science, Heritage grade 3 for ELA, and Dudley-L grade 3 for ELA and math. Those were areas where our students with disabilities scored higher than the state average in advanced proficient or meeting exceeding expectations for students with disabilities. However, most of our schools did not even meet the state average. And that, to me, as a special education director, when I opened that was very troubling. Dr. Nash spoke earlier about equity and giving our students the same opportunities, no matter what, what their learning profile is. And so we need to definitely change some things up as we move forward. And this, a little bit later tonight, you're going to hear one of the ways we hope to do that. But looking at what's next, again, this is not going to be a short-term, quick fix. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some systematic planning. As Ms. Marderoche alluded to, we have begun to talk, Barbara and I have, as well as the Administrative Council, on what we need to do to change things. So from my vantage point as a special education director, in terms of the students that I'm responsible for, I think we need to do a careful review of all our K-12 SPED programming and look at efficiencies. A look at the 3 things Barbara mentioned: personnel, practices, and programming. We need to have clearly defined program descriptors with entrance and exit criteria, so we know exactly that each and every child is receiving the exact services that they need for their learning profile. I think we need to look at our delivery models of instruction across the district. Who's teaching our courses? What are they teaching? Is the content the same as their peers? And how are we delivering that instruction? What's our model? We need to look at tiered intervention strategies prior to them becoming part of special education. Barbara referred to that in hers as RTI, Response to Intervention. And again, I know elementary schools, you're going to hear more than when they share in the next few weeks, but that's one of our big focuses for that. And then finally, teacher PD. And really looking to see what our teachers need for PD to be able to change the delivery models of instruction or improve upon those models that are working. Any questions?
Well, it's interesting to note the percents for the state aren't very high either.
They're not, and they've traditionally been that way.
Yeah.
Even with the legacy test,
Yeah.
they've traditionally been
Not even on 20%.
substantially lower. And when you ask different schools, there are a few schools that are doing really, really well with their special ed population, and I think we need to look at some of them, say what are they doing that we're not? How are they providing different instruction? How are they, are they using different programming? Yes,
I just have a couple questions. Have we had any work done with vertical alignment in our math curriculum?
We've had some, and actually there's some going on right now. Mr. Starshevsky is actually working with a team of math ambassadors that are doing grades 6 to 8. Mr. Starshevsky, I don't know if you feel like speaking a little bit more to that, but the vertical piece is happening with grades 6 to 8, and I believe 8 to 9 as well.
Yeah, we really started looking at the 9th grade algebra standards, because we offer a 9th grade algebra class in 8th grade, for our advanced math, and how to bridge the 8th grade standards from 7th grade to 9th grade. We started there, and we started backing up our coursework. We're kind of in the middle of multiple courses as we start to examine the standards and how we're bridging the gaps for our advanced classes and our grade level classes. And elements of the data reports that we're starting to get from this last round of MCAS is actually pretty helpful to us as we sit down and look at the instruction, our curriculum map, and how it is that we're looking to address any gaps in instruction that we have. Transition of special education classes as well as part of that conversation to make sure that they're aligned to grade level expectations.
Right.
What we've noticed over past years, not really in recent years, but in past years, there was a little bit of an approach to fill foundational gaps and not address grade level instruction, which creates a deeper gap the further we go along that continuum. So we're really looking to ensure that all students are getting access to grade level standards, grade level curriculum, grade level assessments, and then through RTI models being able to backfill, you know, any of those foundational gaps that might exist. So, you know, examples of if a kiddo has difficulty with computation, all right, we acknowledge that. Let's put the calculator in front of them. Let's teach them the procedure and the process, but let's hit an 8th grade standard as opposed to a 3rd or 4th grade arithmetic standard. So that's a lot of the work that we're undertaking.
Thank you. And the other piece to that, the front end of that leading up to what Mr. Starshevsky's work is doing is the 4 elementary schools have math facilitators for grades K through 5. And when the Envision Math program was revamped, I believe it was 2 years ago, bordering, might be 2.5 at this point, they worked really carefully to make sure that their pacing is similar, that their alignments are similar, their assessments are similar, so that they can do a lot more data comparison to make sure everybody's getting equal opportunities. I will say, as special education director, I think for our population, we need to now bring the work that's been done in the general education with that piece to our students and our teachers and have them be looking at the same kind of data and saying, okay, the general ed data's here, we're here, how do we raise the bar? Where's the disconnect between those two things?
Right. And what percentage of your students in your 10th grade took the exam that had like maybe significant needs?
So in 10th grade, only 3 kids took the alt portfolio.
Right, because I just know that from where I come from, it's more of, we have students taking that test who aren't academically actually ready to take that test.
There are several who've taken it multiple times.
Yes.
I don't know, Mr.
Okay.
Chaplin, if you have accurate numbers, or maybe you can share those next week when you do your presentation next time.
Okay.
But as far as the alts, there was 3. But again, I know there are students that are given multiple opportunities to take that.
Right.
The students that are in warning category.
Yes.
Where are we with the students that were in warning?
In terms of what?
There aren't any reflected on here, so did you
Oh,
have
we can show you that. So they're in the graph. I didn't pull them out in the percentages, but they are in the graphs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm trying to frame my question.
Sure.
So I think we're at a place right now that we're recognizing it. The MCAS performance for students with disabilities is something that I've mentioned many years, and I know that you can refer this. I think it is out of our subgroup, the subgroup that has had the least movement going forward over years.
I would agree.
So I appreciate that we're now looking at some of those things that you've mentioned, which is alignment with, general education, rigor, standard, and all of that. I really would like to look at, the elements with the students with warning to see how drastically off they are to moving them to.
So I guess you're saying, are they 1 or 2 points from passing? Is that kind of the question you're asking in essence?
Is it a significant difference, or is it somebody that's on the cusp
Sure.
of being able to be in that category?
That, let you know.
The other thing in kind of just in general, and I know that this to some degree impacts our regular education students as well, which is some of the skill set that's necessary to actually participate in MCAS testing. For instance, keyboarding and typing, which is now part of the new test, which is someone actually being able to sit down and do long answer reply. There has been, we've made great gains this year with getting technology in the buildings, but I think it's a factor that we need to consider, that students are being tested for a skill set that they may or may not necessarily have. So I think it's important to consider that. And I don't know, again, with the students with disabilities, the accommodation changes that were made, which were previously accommodations that you could have that are different this year. So I think that's a factor to look at. But I do want to also, as you're doing your analysis, look at where we need to go with the students that are in warning.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
And just to speak to the technology piece, the 2 new technology integrationists that you have approved, that we hired earlier this year, I've been able to go see some of the things they're doing. They're doing a phenomenal job pushing into the classroom and giving the teachers those skills, exactly like you were talking about, and giving the teachers ideas of ways to incorporate the technology into lessons they're already doing. So that's been a great positive help.
Any other questions? Thank you. Great reports. They were really informative. Next on the agenda is consideration of proposal for new staff, special education director. Dr. Nash, do you want to
Yes.
speak to it first?
I can. This evening, you're going to hear from SPED Director Lorinda Allen. She'll present a proposal to consider some additional needs of new special education staff. Both of them are program needs, meaning that they are related to substantially separate programs that we run in two of our schools, Mason Road and Heritage. Unfortunately, my comment would be that there probably was not a great deal of planning with respect to the potential of identifying students who come into and are identified by outside agencies for us who will be in the pipeline for integrated preschool at age 3. And that's one of the issues. So there wasn't either consideration or it missed someone's radar screen. But you're going to hear Lorinda talk about that and the fact that we have the potential of having 4 or 5 students, which when you have a program already with 10 or 12, impacts that. You can't run that. The second one is a larger issue, and it really addresses one of the things that I think was alluded to when we talk about personnel, programs, and services. That's the structure by which you can have all the alignment in the world of curriculum, but if the correct person isn't delivering it, if the program and model that you use isn't accurate, it doesn't matter. And the reality is, when we are creating programs, in this case a substantially separate program, and we have profiles of students in programs that are extremely different, from autistic at one end of the spectrum to developmentally delayed to cognitive delay, you cannot conceivably put those profiles together and think that you're going to have an effective program. That's the reality. And we're not even looking at numbers. So I'm going to turn it over to Lorinda. We've been looking at this, and this certainly is a discussion topic, not just with our substantially separate programs, but with the issue of equity. If we want to raise the bar needs to be raised for all students. And so we need to examine the models of delivery, the personnel and programs, and the kinds of practices that we currently have in place in order to raise the bar, not just for these students, but for all students. So, Lorinda.
Sure, thank you. So through the chair, Mrs. O'Coin, I would ask you, would you like to hear each one of these as a separate action item, taking the preschool as one item and then the sub-separate as another item?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll begin with the preschool. So currently, Mason Road has one preschool teacher. It is an integrated preschool classroom. So what that means is our students who are referred from early intervention, from parent screenings, who qualify for special education services would receive services in this integrated preschool classroom. What it means by integrated is we try to balance with about half of our students from the general education population, and those would be our students that are tuitioned in, and then the other half would be our special education students. Currently, we have one teacher, one assistant. They are running what we call 4 classrooms. They are there's a Monday, Thursday morning, a Monday, Thursday afternoon, and then there's a Tuesday, Friday morning, and a Tuesday, Friday afternoon. Those classrooms have the capacity by law with one teacher, one assistant for 15. However, that's an extremely large number of preschool students with that ratio to be highly effective. However, we've been doing that for several years, but I think that's one thing we need to look at again down the road. However, the problem that came up this year, because when you're running an integrated preschool, part of what you need to do is to have it balanced so that your students who are special education have what they call peer models to observe. And currently, we have basically 7 slots for special education students, 7 to 8 for our general education students. The general education students, the tuitioned-in students, those slots did not fill this year. However, our special education student slots, we have 1 slot available left for special education students to keep that balance. So in looking at that, we also get lists each year from early intervention. So any students that are identified early on by the state, by pediatricians, by healthcare workers, are then referred to us at the age of 3 to say, this student is on our radar, they're probably going to need services. Right now, in the pipeline, we have 6 of those students that are coming of age of 3 within November and December. Looking at their profiles, again, we cannot make a final determination until they have their assessments and they go through the team meeting. But looking at the profile of these students, we have at least 4 who are going to more than likely require preschool education in Dudley, and we have no place to put them. So that is my proposal for the preschool. Again, you can see what that would look like. We would propose a half-time teacher and a half-time assistant. It would require working, and I've spoken with Mrs. Desto, the principal, about this, it would require pulling some of the students who are general education students from the existing preschool classroom to be able to put them into this new classroom, to have, be able to have peer models for our special education students who might be identified. In speaking with Mrs. Desto, she feels like knowing the families, that there are families that would accommodate that request. So that is my initial request for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the preschool program and why we need that at this point in time.
Address the space issue, because obviously it would be a question, where are we going to?
Sure, so Mrs. Desto, if you wouldn't mind coming to join me and speak about the space issue. While she's coming, I do know that there was a second preschool there in the past. So in terms of furniture and items to equip this preschool classroom, that's all in place. We've got those in storage. Those are ready to go. They just need to be brought out and cleaned up.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? So, thank you, Lorinda, for bringing this to you guys for consideration. It definitely does take some creative working within the scope of Mason Road School, given the fact that we have many classrooms currently that are shared classrooms with our speech and language pathologist, occupational therapy. We have special ed teachers sharing classrooms. We have Title I, ELL. One of the things I think that kind of, when you look at the big picture of everything that's kind of gone down this year, especially with our wiring process, we were able to kind of ask for some additional drops, so to say, so we can put additional, like, computers or whatnot maybe on our stage or somewhere else in the life of the building where we can maybe have traveling art, traveling computers, well, not computers, but traveling gym, health, and music classrooms, and then use that space that those teachers currently have and kind of relocate classrooms so that way the additional preschool can be in that same hallway as kindergarten and preschool. Again, it'll take movement, but I think it's necessary because our preschool numbers are just really hitting an all-time high, given our current caseloads, given what's coming up. And we've got students that are being discussed possibly coming in from out of district, which is great. That's what we want, but we just need the staff and the support for it.
Before people would show up, we have to take them. I mean, you cannot turn them away, so you have to.
So the
part of child find. So
again, the other alternative, because you always want to know what's the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is we put them into the existing preschool. We go through the state requirements of, being above the 15. We get another assistant to be in there. But is that best for children? No, it's not. Because now your ratio's off. They don't have the same amount of peer models. You've got a really full, busy class of 3-year-olds. And it's just not the best choice for children.
And they are babies. I mean, I looked at some of our little guys. I mean, they're looking for hugs. They're looking for people to help wipe their noses. And I mean, things that do take time and energy, but in compassion and nurturing and empathy. So
And there are also students with disabilities, so
Right.
On top of it all.
themselves, the model is different. The needs of students look very different. And when you start getting over a certain number, I don't care how many assistants you have in there and how many adults, it's just not an effective delivery model.
And it becomes a safety concern.
The other piece of this is we do have students who are in our substantially separate program at Mason Road now as well that would be eligible to be able to have some of this push-in time in an integrated preschool and get that experience. And right now, we just don't have the space to be able to let them push in and have that experience. If you approved this, we would hope to post it as soon as tomorrow morning, because we really, in order to meet the timelines of the kiddos who are in early intervention, need to pretty much have that 2-week time frame of our posting as our policy requires, and then be able to just kind of pull the trigger and hit the ground running November 5th. That's a Monday, so as quickly as we can get that up and running.
And then just to piggyback, Lorinda, I think, again, overall, I think we have at least 20 kids down the pipeline coming in from early intervention through referrals. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to require the integrated preschool, but again, that's a team decision, and it's all based on what the team determines, the level of need, and what their actual skill levels are. So
I'll make a motion, we add an additional half integrated preschool teacher and a half instructional assistant at Mason Road.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Yeah, question.
Discussion?
I have some questions, yeah.
If I may share one more thing, real quick before we do questions. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that the other thing Mrs. Desto and I had talked about is because there are still those open slots for general education students, we would post that again, we would advertise it on the website that there are tuition slots still available for students. We don't know what type of a response we're going to get, given that it's mid-year, but we have talked about that as well, opening that again and advertising that for tuition slots.
What is the tuition for the preschool? Mr. Matthew, do you know?
1,000, yeah.
One of the challenges you have is it's a 2-day-a-week program, and parents are looking
Right,
for
2
more
half
than that.
days.
So when you start looking at, you know, the model of this program, and that's the challenge that you've got. You may want to.
It's the timing.
Look at
It's
that
9:30 to
Right.
11:30 or something
Right.
like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
it would
If you have any parents that work, it's almost
It's
impossible.
Impossible.
It's difficult.
But I think too, the 9:30, the 9 o'clock to 11:30 spot is more appealing than that afternoon.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I think
Right.
maybe our likelihood of getting more peer models in, you know, those spots fill up
AMs.
quickly.
The
So
morning
it might
spots have-
kind of help to kind of balance the number of peer models overall everywhere, so.
Next
Go
question.
ahead.
Where would we fund this through?
We have
You
it.
have
Yeah,
that.
Did I not go far
sure.
enough?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So at the end,
Yeah,
so at the
I
end,
didn't get to that piece.
I'll jump in with what I was able to work with Mr. Matthew on, and then if you have other questions. So we have looked at funding both of these programs. So if you look at the bottom of page 4, and again, I know we were trying to keep them separate. So the cost of the preschool program to run it from November to June would be $34,500. Again, that's approximated for a part-time preschool teacher and a part-time instructional assistant. And then again, you also see, we'll talk about the cost of our special education teacher for the next proposal, but we do have one student from an out-of-district placement that is coming back at the end of October, coming back to Mason Road. And so that tuition is around $42,000, so that's tuition that we're already paying, that if the student comes back, we will not be paying that tuition any longer, so that would come back to us. And then again, with one of the programs that we're looking to streamline the effectiveness of it at Heritage School, there's an assistant position that would free up, which is about another gain of about $18,000. So that would give us approximately $60,000 to offset both of the positions that we're proposing. And then in speaking with Mr. Matthew, there is some money still in circuit breaker that would fund the remaining.
Sorry,
So,
that I keep
no,
reading.
that's okay.
No, that's okay.
We had a
That's
lot
good.
to read this
To
week.
Yes,
reiterate
yes,
it,
you
we
did.
need, we need it
The
reiterated.
30,000 difference would have to come out of circuit breaker.
Right.
Do you feel fairly confident that the student will be coming back to the
Yes.
district?
We know that.
We really
Oh,
hope
we
she
know that.
does.
But we don't know the unknowns of who may be leaving.
We
us.
really
Right.
hope she does. She's adorable.
We're just waiting for the team, but everything's in place and
Sounds like parents are excited as
Yeah.
well, so.
Great.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have quite a few.
Okay.
So, just first to address the issue of tuitioned-in students. So we've had conversations about the preschool program at Mason Road, because there's historically been a request from the community for hours that were more conducive to parents that were working. And I know we discussed this when I toured before with Dr. Nash, that there was a company that I had provided the information from that runs before and after school programs, that they hire certified, trained professional development. They lease our location, but they run before and after school programs. I would certainly like to pursue something to make our preschool program more appealing to the residents in the community, so that we can increase the level of peer models that are in this group, and that the company that had provided that information does accept vouchers, which I thought was a great benefit for people in the community, so that I think that could help us out as far as having an increase in tuition students. In my reading this, I'll share with you some of my concerns regarding the modeling. Is typically with students with disabilities, there are generally certain profiles that benefit from a 4-day program or full-day program.
Correct.
In this model that's being presented here, is this reflective of students that are only in 2-day program or students that are in 4-day programming? So how many of these are unique students versus a student that might be taking 8 of these slots?
I can get that information for you. There's not a lot. I believe I'm trying to think of the kiddos off the top of my head. I want to say that there's 3 students that are 4-day-a-week students as opposed to 2-day-a-week students. Does that sound about right?
There are, but what we do, some of those students are also part of Mr. Gametto's classroom, so they're kind of getting a little dose of a lot of the ABA methodology, and then they mainstream to the preschool program to get some of that peer modeling, appropriate social interaction, and some of those typical, generalized skills that are being taught at the preschool level.
And or the ones who need the 4 full days, they get some of their time during a morning session in this integrated preschool, and then they get their ABA and their discrete trials in Mr. Gametto's room in the afternoon.
We have one preschool student who spends the day. But again, I think, the team will determine if that's going to be a continued necessity for her. But, between Mr. Gametto's classroom, although his is substantially separate and it brings in your preschool, your kindergarten, and your first grade, having that to do more of that ABA methodology kind of offsets that they're not just getting, although some would argue that repetitive instruction is good to build on those skills, they're getting kind of a break from that.
So with this, knowing that the population to this classroom can be volatile because you have so many kids that are coming in the pipeline, and you're anticipating this model that you're presenting to us right now is based on students that are currently here. How do the numbers change with the students that you definitely know are in the pipeline for the next 2 months? And I guess my just concern is this even still enough, or are you halftime teacher, what's the potential that this classroom would need to expand to an afternoon program because of incoming students? So, we're projecting right now for a budget impact in order to make this change, but I don't want to be in a position that 3 months from now that you're coming back saying we have all of these other kids coming in the pipeline and this needs to go from a half-time to a full-time teacher.
So technically, with this half-time program added, this would gain us 28 slots.
Okay.
For special ed students, plus we still have 1 available slot in the current program. So that gives us 29 slots for special education students. Now, again, when I say slots, that could be 27 students and 2 of them come, 4 days a week. The projected breakdown of numbers here is based on the number of students we know are going to come, and because of the peer model piece. And that's why we're thinking we need to pull some kids from the existing classroom as peer models to put them into this other class, just to balance out the equality in terms of our balance.
I also think doing that in and of itself will kind of help offset the programming in our current integrated
With the large
preschool.
numbers.
It has 15 students, and again, all of various needs. Some need a lot more than others, but they're babies still. So I think, you got 2 adults that are in there trying to, instruct, provide a curriculum in 2.5 hours. Takes a good half hour just to get them to come in and take their backpack off.
Ideally, I think, Elaine, to your point, that will this get us through this year? Yes, we strongly believe this will get us through the year. Is this the best model to move into next year? I don't think necessarily it is. I think we need to look at that again with Mrs. Desto, with Mrs. Pacheco, and look at both sides of the district again for the equity piece. Personally, in terms of best practices, I don't want to see more than 12 students in a preschool. But again, that costs money, so it's part of that whole looking at efficiencies within the system and seeing what makes sense and how it makes sense to restructure it. But I think to get us through till June, I think this will meet our needs till June.
Okay. Okay, so my question will come back down to, I have some more questions when you get into the next proposal.
Sure. I'm just surprised we don't have any extra rooms. The school is that full. If we had another kindergarten class, where would we put it? I didn't realize you was that full. There's absolutely nothing empty.
I would encourage you to walk through Mason Road sometime if you're
I'll be there
able,
Monday.
because Mason Road is very
Come on in.
I'm coming.
Portable classroom.
very tight.
I didn't realize that we didn't have any extra classrooms. If we had to have another kindergarten or first grade, we wouldn't have.
Yeah, it's tight. It's really tight. I mean, that's why I think I'm excited.
Mobile. Yeah, I know, which is tough.
I think it's
There are sun carts and
Yeah, that's
special
tough.
sun carts.
But the other piece too is changing some of the practice that is going on in that building as far as, instructional assistants have their own desks.
Yeah.
I mean, with all due respect to them, I want them to have a home, a place to hang their hat, but they're not planning, they're not correcting.
Yeah.
They don't need to make phone calls, they need to be with kids pretty much from the minute they get in.
Right.
They have their lunch and the minute they go
Right,
home.
right.
So those are things that we can alleviate some of that space. And I do think, last year when I came into the building, there was a whole classroom just kind of opened for kind of like a behavior management classroom, and we just said, we need that space. So I think it will definitely work, and it will work well. And there's such a great staff there that everybody works so well together that they make it work, and the kids will not feel any kind of impact whatsoever.
Any other questions before we take the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You still need me?
No, I'm good with you. I'll ask Mrs. Pastoria if she would like to join me now.
Thank you, everybody.
As we talk about Heritage School. So, again, this would not be my typical mode of operation. Those of you who know me, to approach you halfway through, 2 months into the school year with needing restructuring and additional staff. But some things were in place before I arrived, and as we're seeing things, I really feel like we need to take care of some of these things for the best needs of children. So this proposal is to add a substantially separate classroom to Heritage School. Currently, they have one substantially separate classroom at Heritage School. When we started the year, it had 14 students in it, with, I believe there was 7 instructional assistants and 1 teacher. And when you went in that classroom, to no fault of anybody other than just the sheer number of people, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming for an adult to walk in there with that many people, never mind for a student. Since then, through the process of really looking at IEPs, a couple of those students have been able to have placements changed. We got it down to 12 with 6 assistants, and one of those assistants we had to move in, so that shifted that assistant to help our move in. And in the meantime, we've still been, Mrs. Pastoria and I have been looking and working with it and trying to figure out these students. And the more we looked at it, part of the reason we felt like that classroom wasn't working well is because the learning profiles of the students in that classroom are so, so different. And I know you could say that in any general education classroom you have different learning styles. But in general education classrooms, these students really need small numbers, small groups, and they need some specific styles of strategies. So what we're proposing in looking at this is that we could break it into 2 classrooms. We would have, in one classroom, we would have 3 students who have autism, with 1 full-time classroom teacher. That would need to be a new hire. We would have 1 program assistant and then 1 one-to-one assistant. Those are assistants that we already have. And then the other classroom, we would have our remaining 6 students, and they have various cognitive and developmental disabilities. And that one would have our current substantially separate classroom teacher in that classroom, 2 program assistants, and 1 2-to-1 instructional assistant. And again, that would meet the needs of our students' IEPs, and it provide better for the needs of our students. And my goal, again, long-term, like I said to you, it's not my mode of operation to come to you 2 months into the school year typically and say, we need this. However, looking at, again, the efficiencies and the model of instruction and all the things that we talked about, I really feel like we need to do this district-wide and look at all of our programs, but the substantially separate one is one where we really need to look at the program. And it started many, many years ago. Some of you may have been in the district at this point, but it started to keep students who, we had a large student population who had autism at the time. And we were sending them out, and we felt like to bring them back, they could be with their own neighborhood peers in their own district and get a quality education here. And as the years went through, again, for different reasons, budget funding and such, students would come up and they would say, well, you know, we don't need to send them out, let's keep them. We have a substantially separate program. And the program just kind of morphed into being a little bit of everyone. So I think part of what I want to do is really look at the programs as a whole, and for next year, again, kind of look at how are these structured and how do they make sense. But for right now, in talking to Mrs. Pastore and talking to the team chair in that building and observing that classroom, we had an outside consultant come in. We had Mrs. Pam Travers come in, who was a special education director for over 40 years. And we said, would you please come in and spend a couple days there and look at this program and see what you think? And are you seeing the same things we see? And how can we change it? And she was of the same opinion, that the program needed to be broken in half to best meet the needs of the kids. So again, to speak to your question about cost, Jamie, what it would cost is 1 full-time special education teacher. So we estimated with Mr. Matthew around $55,000 for that. And again, we had talked about the budgetary offsets for that. One of the other sort of cost savings that we have is that frees up 1 instructional assistant from Mrs. Pastore's building. And so the last time you were at the table, you approved an instructional assistant for Mr. Packard's building for Charlton Middle School. So that instructional position,
We have not filled it.
we have not filled it. So that, in essence, you know, is saving us the salary of 1 instructional assistant from this point of the year to the end of the year as well.
We'll be the one for Mason Road and get someone for Charlton differently.
I'm sorry, say that
The
again?
person there's an extra person you will not need anymore. Could that person go to the Mason Road job?
There's an extra person on paper, because she had 1 person who left. So there's an extra person on paper
But
that
it's
she has not
there.
filled.
It's not- Okay, so no one's losing a job. There's
Yes,
something- okay.
correct.
Okay, any other questions before we take the vote?
We haven't made a motion yet.
No, I mean, make the motion.
I'll make a
and then take
motion
the
that
vote.
we add a substantially separate classroom. And should I break down this teachers? I need that. I don't need that, do I?
So 1 substantially separate teacher for him.
Yeah, you've got
On the
1
recommendation of the special ed-
substantially a
on the
special ed
recommendation of
teacher.
the special ed director.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a couple questions.
Sure.
Within the sub-separate classroom, where are you with the age range of students? Are they within the 48 month?
They are, and they
Okay.
have been even when they were together.
Okay.
Mhm.
I am assuming that are we looking at a solution until the end of the year, or are we looking at a solution going forward? Because my follow-up question would be how this proposal is impacted with students that will be moving up from Charlton
Right.
Elementary School and
Right.
exiting to
That
Charlton
was
Middle
part of-
School.
You took the words out of my mouth, I was gonna
Yes.
add that. So part of the planning is, when you look at this, who's in the pipeline coming up, and again,
Yes.
I think, given what we know at this point in time, it would make sense, you're gonna need that next year.
There are students.
There are students coming up, and so it makes sense to do it now, to get the right people in, and get your programs clearly defined, and then coming up, as you should be doing anyway. That's an annual process, because kids are moving up, and the programs shift and change based on those cohort of students, so something that we'll be looking at, yes.
Okay. Then my next question is, what is our balance in circuit breaker funding?
As of the last memo, it was a little south of $600,000. So there certainly is a balance to cover this expense. The only concern I'll say is every little drop of water that goes out of the bucket isn't going back into the bucket. And that means that that balance is going to continue to get lower and lower without changing. So I think we were fortunate in the way that things broke over the summer, even though we had a number of positions to fill. There was the higher number approved for circuit breaker. So we balanced out to ending up in the same, with the same expected ending balance as previous throughout the budget process. With this addition, it's a minor, in the overall sense of things, a minor increase in that expense, but at some point we have to hope that the bleeding stops.
Well, on a positive note, I think that they stated at today's meeting that there is circuit breaker funding in the FY18 supplemental budget coming.
See whether or not that gets.
See if it comes through.
Right.
Which would be helpful.
What you have to adjust.
And I did want to add that, so 2 years ago, we had, I want to say we had 12 students at the time, and we had 2 teachers in the classroom. So I have the classroom space, that's not going to be an issue at all. That area already exists.
Years ago, we rented out to the collaborative. Didn't they used to use the room in that, is that long gone? I mean, did they go?
I believe it was last year, Diane, right?
Last year
At
was-
Dudley Elementary,
Elementary.
they had rented a space there.
Is that, do we still do that, or are they?
No, we do not.
They're not there
Okay.
this year.
I just have a question about, have we looked at what our overall population looks like between the 2 elementary schools? And is there a way that we can share some resources if we have a student that may have autism at Dudley L that may benefit from this program instead of being outplaced?
So we have done that for years. And that's how the program started, is any of the students in Dudley typically went to the program in Charlton.
Okay.
And throughout the years, the program just started to grow, the cohort numbers started to grow. And so this is the second year of having a substantially separate program at Mason Road. Right, currently, that's the only one of our Dudley schools other than Shepherd Hill that has a substantially separate program. And again, because the cohort numbers have gotten so big. So at Charlton Elementary, we have 2 substantially separate classrooms there. I believe we're up to about 14 or 15 students between the 2. Some of them are preschool students, so again, they're there part-time, different morning or afternoon. And again, the program at Mason Road has about 12 students. So they started out as preschool, kindergarten. This is the first year Mason Road has first graders. So as we begin the budget process too, that'll be something that the hope is to then expand the program into Dudley L to have a program there. And the other hope that, I've been talking with Dr. Nash and Mr. Matthew as we start to look at these numbers is, again, some of our students who have been outplaced at various places, as we build these programs, if they're clearly defined with exit and entrance criteria and we staff them really well, we might be able to bring some of those students back. Not all of them, because some of them need that particular setting, but there is that possibility of that as well.
Any other question?
Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very
much.
Okay. Superintendent search process update. Search Committee Chair. Elaine, you want to start it?
Sure. So today, Dr. Nash and I met for the first time with MASC. So there were three individuals from MASC in attendance: Glenn Kuchar, Tracy Novick, and Kathleen Kelly. So we began the discussion, and in conjunction with them, we discussed timeline and process. So based on the discussion, I'm bringing forth the recommendations that came forth, and just kind of review with you what we've discussed. So we discussed the composition of the search committee, which would include 2 parents, 3 teachers, a representative from DCTA, 1 principal, 1 municipal representative, 2 school committee members, 1 central office representative, a student rep, and someone representing special education, for a total of 13 members. And what we discussed was this individuals that would be interested in serving on the search committee could apply via an electronic submission, so we would put something up on our website so people would be able to apply. This would allow us to outline in detail the timeline and commitment that would be part of the participation on the committee. And then individuals could submit for 1 or multiple categories that they could represent. So we have many people in the district that not only are a parent in the school district, but also work in the district. So we might be able to get more than 1 voice from an individual. And they were they made a point that it was important to make sure that we represented all levels of K-12 in our parent-teacher selection. So the suggestion was setting a deadline for applying and selecting the search committee before the end of October. The next step was that we would begin working on the recruiting materials, which would need to include a job description, a district profile brochure, which would need to be created. And then what we would do we would need to supply MASC with the content and the pictures. They would be able to design the layout for us so that it could be done both in a print format and an electronic format. And that would also need to be done by October. So the timeline is obviously for a November 1st posting. We discussed doing the application process and doing it in-house. So with MASC, we would have our application online and available for people to apply for the position. They would be able to guide us with the template and the criteria that we decided that we wanted for the opening. The time period right now, and this again is all what we've roughed out, would be to open up the position November 1st and close it at the end of November. The position would be advertised through the MASC website. MASC has an email list of people that are interested in superintendent positions that would receive an email application. MASC also has a LinkedIn page that they would post it on. We would have it on the MASS website, our own particular website, and then we could work with our local press to run articles on the search being open through the T&G, Citizens Chronicle, Stonebridge Press. The anticipated timeline that was kind of roughed out obviously was October to create a job posting, create the brochure, advertise for the search committee. In November, we would be posting the position. MASC would be running focus groups and/or doing online surveys to gather stakeholder commentary. And in the meantime, the search committee members would be selected and MASC would begin the orientation process with the search committee. The December, we would look at targeting the paper screening of the applications and the selection of the first round interviews. In January, we would complete the first round interviews. The search committee would then recommend finalists to the school committees, and the finalist interviews would begin. And the February would be the conclusion of the finalist interviews with the finalists doing their district visits, and the district representatives could then visit the finalist districts. That would be completed, and with the anticipated hope that we would be able to make a decision by February 27th. We left some room as far as the schedule is concerned, obviously, because we're going into the time of the year with holidays, and then when we get into the winter, we want to leave some wiggle room in case weather impacts our ability to hold meetings. So I don't know if anybody has anything on that right now before I keep going.
Well, I'm going to go back to the search committee. As the chair of the school committee, I think I should be on the decision-making of who is on the search committee. I will appoint, if we're going to agree to 3 members, I will appoint the 3 members of the school committee to be on the search committee. And I'll just go back to last year's search committee to see if we agree with 13 members or we should have less. Last search committee, we had 1 central office, and that was Rich. And then we had 2 administrators. We had 2 teachers. We had 3 school committee. So it's almost identical, Elaine, of yours. We had 2 community members. 1 was from Dudley, 1 from Charlton, and we had 1 student member, and that was a total of 11. So, so we're not too far. So I think we should decide what do we think our school, the search committee should look like. Kathy.
I would just say I think it's very important for us to make sure that we have that representation from a special education parent, especially since we've put a whole new CPAC together, that we want to really show our support and make sure that they have a voice.
Yes, if we agree to it, I think that's good.
I think 30 is a high number, though, don't you?
I thought
Isn't that
it
kind of
was
high
a little
to get 30
high,
people
yeah.
together?
We asked
asked,
Glenn, you
and
know,
they said
he said that the high number is really 15. And it gets too unwieldy when you listen
trying
to
to get them all
15
together.
people. Yeah, it's typical somewhere, I'd say, the lows that I've seen are probably 9, because it's a superintendent search, not a principal search, not, you know, another central office. They typically are very broad-based. You want community represented, you want your parents represented, you want your teachers represented, you want your union represented. I mean, everyone wants a stake in it, and they should, in some manner. So that's why, remember, this is the group that will do first-round interviews and do the paper screening. So there's a big time commitment. Even though you start out with looking for 14 or whatever the number is, you could end up by the time when people realize, you know, the dates and the amount of time, they can't do it because it falls around when they're going on the traveling or whatever. So it probably will not end up with that, my hunch is, based just on my experiences. Be fewer than that.
And Elaine, what was the other one? That would give us 12 with the special ed. And
Municipal,
which we've not had a
Oh, okay.
representative from town government on any of the
You know,
search
some of
committees.
these
So that
schools
looks
do-
For in that category.
I'm sorry?
Who would you look for?
Usually the town
Could
administrator.
be a town administrator.
And that municipal person could also be a parent. So in other words,
Right.
they wear a dual hat. They're, you know, a town clerk or someone who's also got children in your school district. So they're looking at it from both lenses, and I think that's always good.
so was the suggestion that now that if it's decided, these people by email, if they're interested, will send an
Well,
email to Dr. Nash?
So one of the thoughts is that you would put on the website, you know, obviously what categories people could fill. So somebody could check off that I'm a parent, that I'm a teacher, or I'm a parent and I'm a municipal person. And then with all of the submissions, you might be able to shift so that well, I'm getting a parent, but I'm maybe also getting another voice from, you know, a teaching community, so that we might have, the real concern was making sure we had a span of K to 12. Making sure that we also heard, now, I know when we did the interim search committee, Mrs. Matarosian was on the committee because she was speaking she was a teacher, but she also had an ability to speak to subgroups of students. So you're looking to see
any of them have a dual purpose.
Absolutely, that you could get more impact from it. So, you know, we actually had more people and we cut it down. I think at least 2 parents are necessary, and what we're also looking to do is balance so that there's representation from both Dudley and both Charlton. So I think it's important that, you know, with this, really the most voice that we've given to is to teachers and parents.
And I already got an email from a Charlton parent.
Right.
You
that
probably got the same.
We did. I think we all did from the same person.
I have a question. If I'm a parent and a teacher, does that take up 2 slots, or do you get another person to replace?
No, I think what we're hoping is that we're going to keep the slots the way they are, but we'll have more than, people will be able to present more than
But
one
you'll still
perspective.
have 13. I won't take 2 spots because I have 2 categories.
It will still have 13
Okay.
people, but we're looking to make sure that we can get as much input available through having multiple voices if people like that apply.
I just would like to say, I think that applying on the website and giving them the opportunity to know the time commitment ahead of time.
Right.
And also voice how many roles they could fall into is a really fair and appropriate way to look at that. So, great job.
So I think with it, what we wanted to do was to really outline what the expectation is for people. So, you know, we were looking at, you know, allowing the first week of December for people to screen applications. So people that could either come into central office to do it, or we talked about putting everything available on a flash drive. People could pick up the flash drive, look at everything at home, whatever, we could find mechanisms to make that work. But, you know, if you're looking at, we had 25 applications for an interim position. I would imagine with the reputation of the district, we're going to get a much higher number for a permanent position. So that is a lot of work to screen that. And then even to go in and do discussion and do interviews, you're talking, you know, it could be anywhere from 4 to 6 meetings, you know, even more. So we want to leave the time frame available for that, but we also, you know, we also started to think about if we tried to do a tight December deadline. Our district is very busy with performances, with, you know, that you have holiday obligations. People aren't going to be willing to, you know, we have to leave it. So that's kind of why we moved it, so that we would have everything ready, begin interviews in January, work very quickly to streamline down to, you know, presenting the committee with finalists and then doing all of the other that's associated with it.
It's still pretty ambitious, don't you think, to get that all done by the end of October, the first part?
Well,
You think that's a...
we kind of talked about it today. You know, we have a brochure. Mrs. Sullivan was able to pull the brochure from 2014. You know, they gave us a ton of, you know, ideas and basically suggested that we look at those for ideas. And I think, you know, depending on how you want to move forward, I think we can collectively put it together, give it to them, they can turn it around pretty quickly. They seemed to be comfortable with being able to get this out to go live on November 1st.
Now, do we have a contract with them?
That,
Have they sent it yet?
No. And the cost, did we say?
Was $96.50.
Right.
I don't have enough for everybody, but Mr. Kuchar actually left these on the table because we went right into discussion, but there's this whole guideline here for information and questions, I think, and template, if people want to look at it and raise any questions after, certainly do.
And Elaine, was it 2 teachers or 3? You said
No, we
the
were looking at
president of
3,
the-
we were looking at 3 teachers
Okay.
because we wanted to get one
Right.
from each level.
And you said the president of the union?
A DCTA rep.
Oh,
They
right.
can decide if
Okay.
Mr. Foley wants to go back to the table again.
Okay.
But a DCTA, so it was 2 parents, 3 teachers, DCTA, 1 principal, 1 municipal rep, 2 school committee, 1 central office, 1 student rep, someone representing special education, so for a total of 13. And, you know, we did discuss that, you know, in the event that a parent that was applying was a special education parent, you know, and whatever, the special education could be Mrs. Allen as the so if we get the voice there, you know, we can look at multiple things, so. I think it's
Good
just
job. That
kind
was
of
good.
planning it out.
I
So-
would just like to ask during the process, I'd love to be able to come in at some point and go through the applicants too, even if I'm not the representative, because I feel like that would give me a better opportunity to prepare for an interview process.
Guess what? Every member can look at the applicants.
Okay,
and-
I just,
yeah.
I know we were rushed when
Right.
we were going through the interim
No,
process,
but
and I wanna.
every
just wanted
one
to
of
put that out
us
there. Okay.
can.
They're not gonna do school spring at all? Because I know he doesn't
I wish
like it.
they would put
I
it
think
on
they
school.
should.
You know,
I think they should.
This is just, you know, personal opinion. The MASC people are not fans of
Yeah.
School Spring.
but I
It doesn't
Because
mean
it's
that we can't,
competition.
it doesn't mean we can't put it
I
on
think
School
we should
Spring.
add
We
that to your
should.
list. I
And
think
this
they
way
should
you
be
can
there.
go on
Then you can go
School
on
Spring
you don't have to
and you
leave your
can
house.
look at all the applications.
But he did talk, or I thought that he said that we could put it on there and just refer them to our
Correct,
website so that they
That's
wouldn't
what you-
actually
That's
apply.
what you do,
Right.
because you want it all, you want it to look similar in the application,
That's
that
what he
you,
said they
yeah.
don't, yeah.
And the
That's right.
information, and it looks
But
very
it should
different.
still be on School
So
Spring.
you
It
can
could be
list it
posted
there.
that way and referred to the website.
This is my personal opinion and just something that I feel strongly about, is that I think the application process should be here in-house. In that we have the mainstream of applications coming in through the district website. And the proposal that, and Dr. Nash can feel differently, but they're working on Musconamit right now. And this is their profile and all of this, and I'll scan this and send this out to people so that you can see it. But with the application process for this district, which MASC is working on, the applications are going into MASC. I just feel that it's better to have all the applications come into
I do.
here.
Determine
And then-
however you want it to
And
come.
then we can, we can certainly utilize them to help us with this, but we can have them in here, and then, obviously, them working with us can look at credentials or whatever it is that we decide to do, but, it allows us to, to have a little bit more, control on the process.
So are we going to decide to have the applications also on School Spring and then refer them to
That's what you
MASC?
typically would do. You would refer them to go to, just like if you look at the Mass
Right,
website.
so we
they'll-
can
they'll
look at
post it on the
School
superintendent's
Spring if you
website
want
and
to look
refer
at an
them.
No,
application.
that's what she's saying. She's saying on School Spring, we'll say, apply to Dudley-Charlton. They will
Charlton.
not apply on
They
School
will
Spring.
not.
They won't
So
apply
we're
online.
going to see hard copies then, if you want
Yes.
them to come in.
So School Spring would just be a reference of the position is
okay.
open, this is the job
Okay.
description. To apply, please go to Dudley-Charlton
All right.
website.
And if we
go
want to
through.
look at the applications, then we have the hard copies.
Well, no, because they'll
That-
apply online to Dudley. We could still read them online, can't we? Is it
That's
a
what I
website?
want to know.
No, we're not
No,
going to
see?
do the application process online with School Spring.
No, I know,
they-
but are we doing, if I
So-
went on there and they say refer me to Dudley-Charlton, do I apply online?
They'll apply online to us,
Right.
and what Tracy Novick recommended is that we then create a Google Doc file that has all the candidates
Right.
on it, that we then would
Then we
all
can
have
see We don't have to go
access
hard.
to
Okay.
Right.
in the
All right.
people that are working on the
That's all
committee
I'm
would have access.
concerned about,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we'll have it online
I
and we
just hope
can.
for School Spring, it's to us instead.
Yeah.
I think it's just, the goal, I would hope, as I found School Spring very confusing, is to set up a consistency so that all the
Right.
application
Right.
is the same. The one thing that we did with the interim search, I believe we also did it with the search in 2014, and as part of the Musconamit, I'm not gonna get that word out, application process is designing a question for candidates to answer. Which, I don't know if you wanna do it in the first round interview or you wanna do it in the finalist interview, but that's something that we can work out
Yeah, we did that.
we can work that out. So if we're good with this, then what I can work on
designing a template or working with whoever, Dr. Nash, Mrs. Sullivan, to create the template of what the application is, ask for people to make a statement, and, get that posted and get that up and running, and then we can start that process so that people in the community or any of those categories are able to apply for it. So we can get that going.
Good idea, though.
Okay. So then the next time-sensitive issue is in relation to the job description and the district profile. So we have, we had, the job description from the interim position. I don't know how you want to go forward with editing it to some degree, and maybe you can help me recall with this, because we talked about the process of soliciting information from focus groups for the ability to guide the interview committee. Right. So I think we can kind of move forward with the job description pretty easily, but I think I need to move a little faster on providing MASC with the information to do the district brochure. So whether or not coming to the committee on the 24th and presenting something and getting feedback to give MASC time to turn it around, or do you want to just say that there are a couple of voices specifically that should work on that information, and we'll just move that through and allow me to say we've covered all the bases and go through and get it going so that we can get it up and running, or you need it to come back in front of you?
If I could add, this would be typically the posting that would go on in the brochure, that you would put out certainly electronically. It would include, if you were looking, for example, someone with central office experience, we'd like a preferred minimum 5 years. If you're looking for someone with regional school experience, they're more generic, but it also narrows the scope of obviously who's going to apply and who, based on that. So you have one probably already from 2000, whenever that was, right. 14 or whatever it was. But in thinking about it too, recently, some of those things may change, some of them may be the same. I think moving forward, the ability to do the electronic profile survey, focus group survey of all constituents, to then develop a more defined profile that could be used when the committee starts their interview process, starting with the first round of interviews. In screening as well as in doing your first round interview, you've got something that's even more detailed, that's been driven by what the focus groups have brought forward, whatever they're looking for. Instructional leader, we want someone that's got leadership, we want someone that's a communicator, we want someone who basically can walk on water and do everything else, and somehow, so, but that information just narrows it down, hones it down more. This is more, while people look at it when they're applying, I can tell you, they'll apply anyway, even if they don't have regional experience. Yeah, right. But it does give some detailed information. Will you get people who aren't certified applying? Of course. Will you get people who have no central office if you say that? Yes. That's where your screening comes in, as to whether you think that's part of the profile you want or not. Yeah.
Do you want a motion on that? Yeah. So we can find.
No, I think we'll give the chair and Dr. Nash that job.
Okay. So let me.
And mask. Mask
and
was,
mask.
Mask spent about 2 or 3 hours with us today.
They'll guide us.
There's a lot of line about the district already.
Yeah.
We didn't have that 4 years ago.
Right.
There is, and Mrs. Cavallo, I'm going to look at you because you like the job of composition and editing.
Give it to you do it, I'll edit it.
So what I'll do is I'll send this out to everybody, and if there's some of it is just statistical information, but there's, what I liked about this was, why they're seeking a new superintendent, what their educational vision is, what sets them apart from other people, and then a lot of it is just statistical information. But really getting a sense from the committee on those 3 categories, I think, would be really good in helping to write a good statement. So I'll toss that out and then just let people, and then write something and just throw it out to you for any feedback. If you can just give me the
okay to move forward.
No, move forward.
It will be good.
Thank you.
Okay, so coming back to the search committee, as far as I think we can move pretty quickly that probably putting up the online application tomorrow, leaving it open, and then Mrs. O'Coin pointing the second member of the school committee to it, and then kind of taking a deck of cards and sorting everything out. How do we want to make the decision on the remaining members of it? Is that something that you want me to select, or do you want me to come back to you with a recommendation? Do you want to just?
I think a good thing is come back with a recommendation for us.
Okay.
And
so my goal.
We'll see on the site anyway, who was interested.
Okay. So.
What do you think, Kathy?
Well, we won't see that, will we?
Yeah,
well,
she said she was going to put it on the web.
If I put it up on the web tomorrow, and it's the 11th, I have to close it on the 23rd. We somehow would need to be working with either an email blast out to all parents and all staff, individual schools posting all, and somehow we've got to get communication out to, both towns, then hopefully work on coming down to you and then saying that this is where we are, if you want to be able to make a decision on the 24th, or the only time that I'm going to see you as a committee is on the 24th before
I think
the
we
end
have
of the
to have
month.
the search committee on the 24th. You want to make the decision, right?
So, yeah.
Is there any way, given that you're gonna choose the school committee, other school committee member, is there any way that the two of you could work together via email even to kind of sort
Right.
that through
We can-
and come up with a solid list together so
Right.
that it's a pretty
That's
two-person
what we'll
vetted
do.
list?
Elaine.
Remember that Elaine has to go through, the more information we give about the commitment of time and dates,
Right.
that's important. So while it's
Agreed.
important to get this out, we want to make sure that people recognize it's going to be an orientation session in November, that, we're going to be doing paper screening in December, going to interviews in January, and whether that will be done on a weekend, on a Saturday, or evenings. So I think the more information you give people as to the
Agreed.
potential, the better it's going to be, because the last thing you want is for people saying, no, I can't make this, and I can't make this,
Right.
as Glenn
So
Coach
Elaine,
indicated.
you and I will deliberate on the search committee, once you see the emails.
Okay. So are you going to be the second member on the search committee?
No.
All right.
I was thinking about it, but I'm going to throw it out to the members to see who would be interested.
Can we see the time, like
Yes.
what the exact dates you're planning?
Right.
You may have it the same day, like every
Yeah,
Wednesday or
tonight
something
though,
like
right? You just mean like.
So we started with
before
the
we make
calendar
commitments.
today.
that. Those little red dots.
to lining things out. Well, based on when we had to do things in relation to getting to meetings. So we looked at the week of December 3rd being the week of screening, and then looking to convene, this is my goal based on when people's availability would be, but I'd like to be looking at December 11th, which is a Tuesday night, for the convening of the screening committee to go through and make their projections. But that's based on December 11th not conflicting with a snowstorm or something like that, and then having a secondary date available.
When are you going to meet first with them? Because that's not your first meeting.
We're going to look to do that in November.
Do you have a date picked yet?
We didn't, because that was a thing that we were a little bit more flexible about.
It's mask availability, they'll come in and do the orientation for you,
Yeah.
so you'd have to work through
So
that.
they'll come in?
They come in and do the, kind of an orientation of
criteria,
what,
what you have to do.
Talking about,
yeah.
Your job, basically.
confidentiality
Yeah.
and all of that information. Plus, we would be targeting November to be doing the focus group. And again, we talked about most of that being as an online process, but also whether or not, Glenn, we kind of talked today about whether or not we would be looking for some invitation to a focus group to make sure that we were getting voices from, designated community members that may or may not be in the streamline of information that our parents and our staff would be for participating in getting information. So we might be looking to invite in groups of people to talk to. But the search committee orientation would also be the process. We would be discussing categories of questions, giving people the opportunity to propose the questions. MASC recommended that people be submitting their questions on the night they come in to do the candidate selection, so that I could then go through and make sure that we have coverage over all potential categories that we were having representation on the questions.
And even though we're not on the search committee, we still can be involved, because you're going to look at the applications and you can give Elaine feedback if you see something that, really catches your eye. So, I mean, just because you're not on the committee, you're still going to be involved.
Obviously in February, we've got school vacation week, but as we did 4 years ago, we ended up, you could have multiple nights of finalist interviews that we're going to need to schedule on off nights. So we're trying to leave as much.
It is a lot of
available.
work, because I was the chair in Webster of the superintendent search. It was a lot of time, a big commitment, and a lot of work, so you have to be ready for it.
Did they recommend how many finalists you should bring?
No.
Okay.
In that really, what the discussion was today was really centered around the fact that your application process is really going to drive your amount of applications. We heard from both representatives from NESDEC and MASC that the district is a good district for people to be looking at. So I think, we should end up, just based on the interim search, I would imagine that we're going to get a good representation. And our timing is very good right now for applying. I know you had a conversation with Glenn about.
Well, the caveat is, one of the things, if you make some decisions to take all internal candidates and move them to finalist round, that will jade your pool of candidates that you'll get applying. It is not typical, and Glenn was very clear on that. It potentially impacts it because people think you have an inside candidate, so they don't apply. I had a conversation today with Glenn about what were open positions, and we were talking about some of them in the area, and I said to him, "Oh, gee, I was told that the assistant superintendent is going to get that position." He said, "No, it's open." Okay, I'm going to pick up the phone and call the girl that I've been mentoring to tell her to apply, because she thought the same way we all thought. So one of the things he did say is that, if the committee wants to do that, just understand that will potentially close that pool. It does not say that you would not move everybody who's internal to the first round, but not to the finalist round, because that, by beginning that, you close the pool before you begin. Yeah, because people say that. It's just human nature. I mean, we've all done that. The first thing you do when you start looking at this job, you want to ask, what's the stability? Do you have a transient superintendent? And how many years? That's a plus. What's the salary? What's the size of the district? As far as a region, is it a single region? Not multiple school committees. Those are things that people start looking at. And if they hear that that's going to happen, he said, that will change the pool. That will dramatically impact, because that's the question they ask. People don't want to put themselves out there. And if they're a sitting superintendent, if they know they don't really have a shot and it becomes public, they say, why did I go through that? And I've had this conversation with a lot of the individuals that I've mentored over the years when they've been frustrated because they're in the process, and they said, you know what, why didn't they just tell us that's what we want to do? That would be fine, but I wouldn't go through it. We wouldn't go through that process. So that would be the only thing I would say, make that decision. But just know that, from his recommendation and doing this over the years, from my observations and hearing and being involved, that I would say just whichever way you decide, just know it may impact, your pool one way or the other.
Anything else?
You don't pick a school committee person tonight?
I can. If, but I think
helpful.
some of them wanted to know about the time commitment before they decided. Anyone interested this evening?
Couldn't we all go on the same process that you're having the public go on? And then we'd all have equal opportunity to look at the scheduling and put in our name if we wanted to?
Okay, if you want to do it that way.
I have no desire to do it, so I'm out of the pool.
You know, I can
No, I
say,
think someone,
I think I should appoint someone this evening that's interested. I mean, just be willing to do work and get involved. And
While I have interest in doing it, I can't commit to that timeline, so I'm gonna take my name out of the hat.
okay, so we've got 3 out of the hat. And,
I really feel like looking at the schedule gives me a better answer to
Okay,
I really feel
well
like
then-
to be fair to the
Okay.
school committee, the process
Right.
and my schedule.
and you'll have a definite schedule, but is there any, I don't,
Well,
it's hard to have a definite
And
schedule.
Actually, we really can't commit to a
Right.
defined schedule, other than we can roughly tell you,
Yeah.
you know, that there will be,
Because
you
once you
know,
have the meeting.
a minimum.
you'll have a November orientation, that
Right.
probably will be a couple of hours, and then in December,
There'll be
that
one.
will be your paper screening. You'll have done your paper screening on your own, but then you have that meeting to
Meeting in
review and
December.
discuss and determine who you'll interview. So that's probably 3
Stephanie, are you
hours.
in the pool?
So,
Yes, I am in the pool.
Okay.
so.
Clarifying question. So my biggest issue is that I just physically cannot do site visits during the school day. Like,
So,
for me to
yeah.
take off school time is,
Typically, it's a smaller, it's not the entire committee.
Okay.
So when you get to this round and you're doing site visits, it's usually your school committee members. So it's a school, and it doesn't have to be, that's another way for the school committee members who couldn't be involved in the entire search process to now be involved in the finalist. And what, you know, the best experience that I've seen is where the same members go, because then it's the same feedback that you get because they've seen all 3 or 2. So it's another way for some people, you know, maybe at that time of year, to go to 2 or 3 finalists, depending on how many you have, to their districts and collect that information and bring it back, so.
So
So-
Mrs. Reed and I both did site visits in the search in 2014, and we were not part of the search committee.
okay.
But when it came down to the school committee level and we'd done finalists, we then went out on site visits representing the district. So just to answer that question, one of the things that we did discuss today was based on the amount of applicants we could have in a first round interview, we discussed the possibility of maybe doing night meetings or maybe doing 1 or 2 Saturdays. And if we're interviewing 14 people, you know, to do it on nights in the wintertime is difficult. If you just did, you know, 2 Saturdays and did it all, it would be easier. So a lot of that, you know, that part we don't know until we look at it. I think we're going to write it as the possibility in January could be up to 4 nights and/or 2 Saturdays, or maybe 2 nights and a Saturday. Who knows? We need to leave some flexibility.
You
for
have
whether-
to have the committee together and you really make the decisions, right?
Well, I think people kind of need to know before they apply, because
Yeah.
if we put them on the committee and they say, oh, I can't do
No,
Saturdays,
no.
and that's what we decide
No,
to do.
I'm just saying what Saturday and that for scheduling. but I
Right,
mean,
yeah, absolutely. Then we could then pick a Saturday.
Not the exact
Right.
date, but some sense
Some-
that there'll be
Right.
3 nights and 1 Saturday or
Right, that's
something
what
like that.
I
Yes,
added
yeah,
to that.
yeah.
So, Stephanie, are you interested?
I could do it if you wanted me to.
Okay.
Yeah?
You're interested or no?
No, Kathleen.
Okay,
She should be the Dudley person, I think.
okay.
Then I have a Charlton person and a Dudley person.
Right, and a parent.
Okay.
On the Dudley
And a
side.
parent.
And a parent
Ooh,
of
double-
young children.
double-
Right.
double here forever.
A parent of young children.
So you're all set, you're okay with it, Kathy?
I might call you to babysit.
Okay, I will.
No, you've got her.
Remember? Your kids are my kids' ages.
License in January.
Perfect, they'll be over.
Chicken nuggets? You like
You'll
those?
tell me. I'll help her out, tell her.
Thank you.
Okay, so Kathy is it?
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So we have the members of the
The
committee.
school committee is set, and then we'll put the application process out. So can I just follow up on something that Dr. Nash had brought up from MASC recommendations, which is what we want to do as far as the internal, external piece, and whether or not, and I know Mrs. Kabbalah at the last meeting had stated to move any internal candidates to finalist round, but based on speaking with MASC today, are we comfortable stating that any internal candidates would move automatically to the first round interviews? And Glenn said that in itself was an advantage. If we had 40 applicants and they're automatically part of the screening interview, then they have had an advantage over everybody else that's applied. So I think that that's something that needs to be
Ironed out
clarified.
tonight.
Yeah. So what are our thoughts on that?
I would go with the recommendation.
How about everybody?
You know where I stand.
I know where you stand, so I know 3 voices, so I need to hear from the other 4, because it's going to influence how we move through the process.
I would go with Glenn's recommendation.
Okay.
Kathy?
I would go with Glenn's recommendation.
I would go with Glenn's recommendation.
Okay.
And Stephanie?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm with Kathy, but we're in the minority.
They can make the
Because,
first round, they can still go on.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Glenn's point was that if we do that from the very beginning, we're not going
People
to
would
have,
think,
we're not
yeah.
going to have an open process. You know, the process will let people move forward. But if we do it the other way, then we're probably not going to get applications in from people that would consider the district.
So, okay.
Okay.
Now that's clear.
All right, so on the 24th, or do you want to work offline from the school committee meeting to put the rest of the committee
We'll do
together?
it on, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
okay.
we'll set, you and I'll talk to you and we'll set a deadline for when that'll
Right.
close, and then you and I can sit and
Right,
meet and then
yeah,
go through.
we can meet at the
Okay.
school if you want to meet
Okay.
one day, and we'll go over it, and
Okay.
whatever you recommend, or if I see something, we'll just work it together.
I'll
Okay.
scan this and send this out to everybody so that you can then throw some feedback in on it. And then you have the handout that MASC brought regarding the process. If there's anything that you've got with questions, then let me know. And Mrs. Camignani, I'm very happy I'm not alone anymore. Thank you.
Okay. And that brings us now to our next meeting dates. The school committee meeting will be Wednesday, October 24th, and will be at the Charlton Middle School at 7 p.m. Budget and Finance Subcommittee will be, when will that be now?
November 14th.
November 14th, and that will be at 5 o'clock, and that's at Shepherd Hill, right?
No, that'll be at Charlton Middle School.
Oh, that's going to be at Charlton Middle School, okay.
You can't go too, stay too long.
Mrs. O'Coin will need to be on the agenda for the 24th, so we can recap today's
Yeah.
meeting for you.
Okay.
Right. Okay. We'll put that in.
All right. So, future agenda items?
I just have one for the policy subcommittee. I think we're supposed to have a new lunch policy. Isn't there a deadline we're supposed to do that by September 30th?
I think we
I think there was a
have
deadline.
We have a
We have a policy. We do have one, 'cause I
But we
checked.
wanted to revise that. We didn't, so I was going to suggest you put
Okay.
that first
All
on your
right.
committee.
We're meeting tomorrow.
We are meeting tomorrow.
Why would you look at the
10.
lunch policy one?
Yeah.
Because we wanted to change that.
Right.
And I think, according to the state, weren't you supposed to have a new one in place? If you
If
didn't
you
have one,
didn't
you
have
had one.
one,
Right,
you
but
needed
we
to
want
make
to fix
sure.
ours. We don't
Right,
like
but we,
ours.
since we have
Right.
one,
We're
we
all
could
set,
revise
but
it
should-
anytime.
That'd be a good one to work on.
I think we, in our policy, we're covered as far as the issue they were trying to correct, which was
About
We have
not having
the
child
quality of the
time
lunch you
and-
provided to
Right.
students that couldn't
Yeah,
afford
but I
it. I
think we
think
still
we're
have to work
good,
on the wording
but
on
we'll
that,
look
don't we?
at it.
So that should be,
Why? Okay.
so that should be one of the ones you should look at first, I would say.
Okay, okay.
And just through the chair, we had that policy from the last meeting that you were
Right.
gonna take on
Yes,
first.
yep, yep. that's on
We
the
have that
agenda.
on the docket. Yeah, I have another binder.
Okay, I'll read the future agenda items, and if you want to add more, we will. Principals MCAS presentation, MASC/MASS joint conference resolutions, timeline and process proposal for district office reorganization. Anything else?
The minutes from the budget and finance.
Okay.
And then, Mrs. O'Brien, I have a question. It's more of a procedural thing than it is an agenda item, but I don't know where to address it. I wanted to know if we could create a school committee portal on the website that would be accessible to us, that would have the documents that we look to access regularly, which would be, budget documents, our contracts, our regional agreements, minutes. I'm frequently emailing Mrs. Sullivan saying, oh, can you get that for me? Can you get that for me? But if we created a portal that would allow us to research on our own prior to coming to meetings, I think it would make us more efficient. So I don't know how that would be done, but then I didn't know whether or not there was somebody in the district, perhaps one of our new technology integration specialists, that wouldn't mind providing school committee members some training on how to use Google Docs, because I don't. But it would be so much more efficient if we could be, we getting everything electronically, and
Right.
I'm printing everything out at home to put notes on it. I'd like to find a way to work more efficiently.
Yeah.
So,
And I like that training, because it says Google Docs, and I try to open it.
yeah, I
and,
can't.
you can't.
I've been YouTubing it to try and see if I can
Yeah.
figure it out.
So that's a good idea. We'll work
Okay.
on that.
Thank you.
Mrs. O'Coin's
Yes.
calendar study subcommittee, we should probably put that on the agenda as
Okay.
well.
And just for, Mary, that's a committee that looks at your next year's calendar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that subcommittee already formed? Are the
Well,
individuals?
I don't think,
We've had the same group for 2 years.
yeah.
All right.
Who, it's,
It's Stephanie, myself, Mrs. Allen, Mr. Foley.
and Mr. D.
yeah. I think, does
And the
anyone want to be
superintendent.
off? I mean, you
I'm fine
you
with-
like it.
I'm
You're
fine
fine
with
with
it.
it. Stephanie, you like it too?
Yeah.
Okay.
And who was the?
Can I just add the thought about the beginning of school being so hot to your ideas and mindsets?
We can. We've looked at it. I brought it up before I was ever on school committee. I came to a school committee meeting to bring it up.
So,
If I could bring forward the voices of so many parents that have brought it to me.
Oh, believe me, I know.
can I make a suggestion that
Mr. Duramian.
Oh,
He's
okay. Yeah, yeah.
that the calendar subcommittee maybe put out a Survey Monkey again regarding particular issues, because the issue that you're bringing, and I know Stephanie and Mary can probably bring up the studies, but there's been all kinds of conversations about whether or not you want to start early, get out early, start later, get out later, whether or not you want to go 2 vacations, 1 vacation. All of the impacts of all of those things have been surveyed in the past, and I know they put a lot of conversation into it, but if it's important to have updated voices, then maybe they can throw out a survey prior to the convening of the committee or once the committee's running to make decisions, because there was a lot of backlash, although there was a lot of thought that was put into the decisions that were made, and, I'm thinking there's a particular issue regarding the 1 week or 2 week vacation that was pretty a virtual 50-50 split. 50% of the parents wanted us to go to 1 week, and 50% of the parents wanted us to stay to 2 weeks. So I think it's best to survey and not leave it on the burden of the committee.
Absolutely.
Sandy, is it possible to get the previous because remember when we were looking at the ice storm that year?
Right.
And when we were gonna make up those days, is it possible to get the previous Survey Monkeys that documentation? I know I probably have the last one, but I don't think I have the ice storm one.
You probably can, as long as they're, yeah, I would think as long as they're
Yeah,
captured
somewhere.
somewhere.
So
Yeah.
we'll
Somewhere.
Yeah.
leave all that up to the subcommittee.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Anything else for the future agenda items? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? And we're adjourned.